Hello, Mutant Radio listeners. This is Dark Alley, aka Robert, and I have a bit of explaining to do. On December 4th, 2016, we conducted an interview with Erik Helwig, aka Hot Dad. This audio was supposed to be played during the 2016 Winter Mucella and subsequently released onto our YouTube page. Unfortunately, though, a little bit after that interview was recorded, my hard drive completely failed and crashed and died. I lost everything. Most of the interviews that we conducted previously, obviously that interview as well. But luckily, this week, I was able to discover that a third party had recorded the interview. And this is what we're presenting to you here today. A few notes on this. We do get into the topic of Sam Hyde. This was recorded on December 4th, 2016. One day before $1 Million Extreme is canceled by Adult Swim. It's interesting to say the least. Actually, the entire interview itself is quite interesting. And we're greatly sorry we weren't able to release this earlier. Erik, we are so sorry we weren't able to release this sooner. So everyone enjoy.
Hello.
Hello, Erik.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How's your day been, man?
Not bad.
You're
How
good?
about y'all's?
Doing all right. Yeah.
Oh, pretty good.
It's all right. It's Sunday. It's nice and
Can't
lazy.
complain. Had to go to work, but get paid that extra money.
Yeah.
Working on your day off. So, Erik, you're
Okay.
here to do an interview with us.
Yeah.
You go by many names. Let's see. Well, there's Hot Dad, Dots.
Dot
Damn
Flist.
Doubtless.
Now I don't remember all of them.
Yeah. I mean, Dotflist is essentially phased out, except for like the channel name is still it, because like they gave me the option to change to another channel name, but like I haven't come up with. They won't let me just have Hot Dad. Like
What? They
I
won't?
don't know. They want you to use. They want you to do Hot Dad in a character. Like I tried a bunch of stupid stuff to get it to work. Like I changed my. It's like if you change your display name, it suggests something. So I
Oh,
tried
yeah,
to
I've
make it
had
Hot
that.
Da, and then add a D to be the extra character, and they won't accept that. So it's something about like them restricting certain names on YouTube. So yeah, that was my old channel name. I mean, like that was what my friend Alex and I, like that was what we called ourselves.
Then there was also what was the second one was like Girl or something like that.
Girls Who
Well, that's-
Care,
Girls Who Care.
That's his
Go
band, isn't it?
yeah, that's my
That's your
serious band.
Serious
In
band.
quotes. In
Just
quotes.
seems
Yeah,
serious.
actually, I just wanted to quickly ask, why or like when did you make the change from Dotlist to Hot Dad?
The thing for me was that my friend Alex and I, like, we made videos together, and I mean, I'm like 4 or 5 years older than he is, or I guess more like 3 or 4, but I had already graduated college by the time he went into college. And I mean, he had been out of high school for like 3 or 4 years. Like we were doing this, we both worked at Best Buy, and we were both making videos together, and he decided to go to college, and it was like we had kind of a community that, I don't know, it was a really good community. I mean, we made stuff, it had sort of the same flavor as what I'm doing now. And I mean,
Yeah.
all the videos are still up there, but it's like I had, a couple hundred people, and it was like I just didn't want the channel to die. And so I
Yeah.
was just trying to come up with something to do with the channel, and then that was when I started doing the TV themes, and then eventually it was like people were asking me to release them, and it's like, well, I want a name for these then, because people were, there were a few. Laser Time was one of the first podcasts that ever wrote about me, and they were calling me Dot Flist, and it's like I don't know, it's not a very good name, artist name. So it was like I had to adopt something that would be functional like that.
Okay.
Then I just want to know, like, was Hot Dad was that something that you just was like, okay, I got to do something that's different, Hot Dad, or did you spend some time thinking about what a funny sounding thing, or did you have that name banging around for a while?
I mean, I think it's a great name, and
It is a pretty good name.
I mean, when I have a good idea, I mean, I'm not a dad, but it just has the aesthetic, I guess, that I'm going for. I mean, it can be sleazy, it can be honorable, it can be loyal, it can be, I mean, it just has a lot of components to it. And I don't know, it's just like if I get when I have good ideas, it's when I'm not trying to have them. And it was just something that I was, walking around the house and I was like, oh, Hot Dad, I'll write that down. And then I registered the Bandcamp like 3 months earlier because there's like a vaporwave artist that also tried to release a Hot Dad. I mean, theirs is like, I think it's like Sexy Father or something is what they ended up calling the Bandcamp. But yeah, I found another Hot Dad after I registered the Bandcamp.
Nice.
Well, speaking of your ideas, do you approach it from the perspective of like a musical concept at first or as a comedic concept?
I mean, okay, so we've talked about, where I was talking about Girls Who Care being serious or not. And, I had when I started doing the TV themes, I had some of them that were, they were songs that could have been legit. Like some of them were just obviously a joke, and some of them were, I don't know, they were emotionally charged. And part of me was like wanting to use them for Girls Who Care and being like, I can't waste this on Hot Dad. I can't waste this on a comedy
Yeah.
band. But then the other part of me, I started to figure it out that it's like when you get uninhibited because you're just making whatever it is comes out. I guess I started to just respect whatever the idea was and not care whether it was funny or whether it was serious. And so, I mean, I guess to answer your question, it's just, yeah, I mean, if it's based off of like No Sex, No Laid was me literally just singing, I don't ever want to get laid, I don't ever want to have, like just singing that hook. Like that was it. That was how I recorded it into my phone and I built the song around it. I guess when it comes to Girls Who Care, it's usually started with an instrumental, and when it comes with Hot Dad, it is usually an idea, a lyrical idea that I record. I come up with a lyric and a melody for a chorus, and then I start building a song around it. So, in
Okay.
some sense, yeah, I guess you could say it's more comedy focused, but it's not. I'm trying not to force it. I guess it's like it's just got to naturally assemble itself from there, from the
Right.
initial fun idea.
Yeah.
From these ideas, I'm interested, where did the concept for the wrestle tape come from?
That was just somebody on Twitter who liked my TV themes was like, why don't you do wrestlers? And that was it. Like I just picked, she gave me like 4 or 5 of her favorite wrestlers. I don't think she expected me to do any of them. And then I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do Stardust. And I vaguely looked him up because I don't follow wrestling. I watched wrestling. I'm going to say it was like 97-ish. I was in like 7th grade, and I don't know if it had a resurgence or what it was, but it was very popular at the time. And it was like I used to watch it with my dad and we used to laugh at it, and it wasn't at that time I couldn't grasp like how I couldn't suspend there's no suspension of disbelief on my part. It was just like can you believe it? He barely looks like he hit him. I don't know. I couldn't appreciate the larger scope of it, and so I don't follow wrestling. I mean, I have respect for what it is, but yeah, it's just picking a subject, and I guess that I tend to focus on the right things for people. I don't know. I mean, I just have a process of writing a song that like. I'm always blown away when somebody's like, "Oh, you must really be a wrestling fan if you wrote 25 of these songs." And I'm like, "No, I'm not really into wrestling. I mean, I just I've just done songs and people ask for them and I do the next wrestler and then they're like, "Wow, I like this." And then that makes me do another one and that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Thinking about that, I was kind of wondering about this because I mean, you say you don't like wrestling. Like when I listened to your Bob Dylan song, and
Right.
or like what else, like the Futurama theme, or just the TV themes in general. I was thinking about how a lot of songwriters, when they try to write a song about something or for something, especially something musical, there's always this massive temptation to steal, or not necessarily steal, but like copy that. So like when in David Bowie's like song for Bob Dylan, he wrote the song. It sounds like Bob Dylan. It's produced kind of like a Bob Dylan song. He sings a lot like Bob Dylan. But when you did your Bob Dylan song, just sounds, it almost seems like it's by a person who never has heard any music by Bob Dylan, but is just aware that like he's a really big cultural phenomenon, like what he does. And I'm just wondering, do you like work really hard to like divorce the musical meaning from what you're writing about, or do you just like start with an idea and then splice in what it is you want to write about?
I mean, the best concept for that I can, I mean, so when I was in high school, I got into Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and
Very good.
there was a I'm thinking of the Mike Judge episode where Space Ghost is like, he's pretending to do Beavis and Butthead, and he's like, "Oh, shut up, Buttland, you know, I am Beavis," and then he had Matt Groening, or however you say his last name, from The Simpsons, and you know, and he was saying like, which one is Homer? Is that the baby? And it's like, it's this idea of like, so he's supposed to be, you know, a smart ass talk show host, and you know, he's running the shots, or I mean, he's calling all the shots, and it's like he's making fun of something that he doesn't really understand. And something about that really spoke to me, that like they could parody these things, and it's like, if you're not paying attention, or if you're not thinking any deeper, you'd think like, oh, this guy's just an idiot. He doesn't get this. He doesn't understand The Simpsons. He doesn't get that Homer's not the baby. You know, Maggie's the baby. and like that's happened a lot of times. Like when I've released TV themes, and I've like, the one I did for The Simpsons was me purposefully messing up all the characters, and there were comments on it that were like, that's not, you know, Bart and Marge are not the parents, and there's just something really fascinating about toying with that idea for me, like,
Yeah.
you know, coming at it from a perspective of, yeah, does he actually know? Has he ever heard a Bob Dylan song? You know, I think that it's a tired trope to you know, do the Bob Dylan voice, and
Well, yeah.
if you're gonna do a Bob Dylan song, make it in the style of Bob Dylan. Like I figured the best thing to do is just do whatever comes out, and that was what it was. So I mean, that was a suggestion that somebody made, and you know, I just had that influx of subscribers, and I was like, this seems like an everyman kind of thing to do, you know, Bob Dylan, I'll just do this. And then my editor was excited about it too, so like, yeah.
Speaking of your editor, how is the process for making your videos? Like, what is the back and forth between you and your editor? Do you live nearby each other and you just can transfer this information very easily back and forth? Are you sending it to him? You filming your things and sending it to him to edit afterward, and you give him the song, everything like that. How does that work for you two?
I mean, my whole thing, I guess, that I've tried to emphasize, you know, I believe in delegating things. You know, if somebody can do something better than you, you know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I don't think that the best end product always comes out of, you know, trying to do everything yourself. And I'm not that visually inclined, like I never have been. When I was saying that I worked with Alex, he handled most of the video editing, and when we started to do things that were way better, it's because like he could look through a camera, and he could, you know, frame a shot, and he could edit, and he could do these things. So I mean, I more or less, you know, present him with a song and the lyrics, and he makes a script. You know, he makes himself notes, and then he'll either send me a list of shots, or, you know, like for Bob Dylan, I just sent him the song, and he made the video, sent it back to me, and I, you know, made some suggestions, and he either vetoed them or didn't, and then that was it. But then if it's me included, yeah, I mean, it depends on, like, if it's a really big project, then yeah, there'll be more back and forth, and more of like, can we do this joke here? But like, I'm working on another Christmas song right now. You know, he sent me a list of shots. I went and bought a bunch of stuff today at thrift stores and dollar stores to, you know, costumes and stuff, like based on his shot list. So I mean, I give him a lot of freedom, you know, in terms of there'll be the little jokes, like the shots that you have to hit pause or else you can't read what's in there. Like most of that he just writes himself, and I ultimately give the final okay on it. But yeah, I mean he'll in the video for my grandson, he made the whole poster that I ended up, like hanging up in the video. Like he sent me that all filled out. It's just like, so he is kind of like a totally autonomous in this situation, but I'm ultimately giving the final okay, if that answers your question.
Okay.
Speaking
That
of collaborators, you've worked with quite a few since the popularity of Hot Dad has risen, such as Frank Javsey. What would you say has been the process in which you collaborate, particularly Frank?
I mean, Frank was. I saw him. I'd seen some of his videos, and then I saw him interacting with Anthony Fantano a lot, and I just sent him a message on Twitter and asked, "Do you want to do something?" And he, asked me to send him a couple of my videos, which I did, and then he's like, "Let's do a song about memes dying." And that was, I mean, that was it. I just got excited about it because he was a larger YouTuber than me, and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to do this." And I just spent the next couple days writing it, that song, and I left him a big gap for a rap verse, and I sent it to him. He made me a trap beat, and then I just reassembled the song. I mean, I guess in terms of collaborating, I think it depends on who initiates and like strengths are, because like at this point, um, I mean, not to knock on Frank's production, but like I technically have better equipment at my disposal. Like, I mean, he has it's like a USB Blue Yeti microphone and stuff, and it's like, I've got some pro mixing friends who give me tips, who, I'm using this device that's like, the guy who, I mean, it's like I bought it through his endorsement, so like I'm using all these plugins, like all this really nice gear that's like all been approved through him. And in a situation like that, it's probably better for me to mix and master the track, or do whatever it is that I was going to do, and then have Frank throw in his addition and his trap beat, which there's no way I would have been able to make a beat like that. Like my background is drumming, but it's playing on a drum set, and I don't have a lot of patience for that kind of beat programming. It's like when you can physically play it. I don't know, that like a lot of my drums are approached. I'm programming them, but they're things that I would physically play, if I were actually playing.
That was actually kind of something that I was wanting to ask you about. Your live instrumentation versus your like post your production.
Synthetic.
Yeah, like your
Sure.
synth drums, things like that. Do you have like a preference, or is it really just completely dependent upon the song? Do you like try to make sound effects as much as you can, or are you fine with working with like a digital audio workstation or something like that?
I mean, live setup, I'm all about density. I mean, I don't like thin performances, and we don't my brother plays drums live, and then I just have Ableton Live running with all the backing tracks that I want, and then me playing guitar, and then my friend who is, I mean, my long-term musician friend, I mean, that we've always been in bands together. He was originally going to be my bassist, but we just decided that like it's better to just have pre-recorded bass tracks and have him on, lead guitar. Like that's way more exciting. Like I think that we can get a thick sound out of three people. I don't know. It's like, to me, when I'm not a huge fan of like basic setups, or just like one guitar, one bass, one drum set. There's something about that that's just like limp. That like I want at least a lead guitar and a rhythm guitar. There's just something about how I approach things that like I get really uncomfortable with like empty space. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like that, and Ableton's been incredible for me in that I can just queue up as many synth tracks as I want, as many sound effects as I want. I mean, to me, it's not about necessarily having a launch or a Novation launch pad and hitting one button that triggers a weird synth sample, because that can go wrong. I'd rather just have that pre-programmed and just have the guitar and just have that accuracy. I don't. I guess that's probably from my drum perspective, that I want things to be pretty quantized and pretty clean. If that answers your question. I mean, I don't. There's some people who love chaos and they, the idea of a pedal malfunctioning or just turning knobs and stuff. I'm too pragmatic in terms of when I'm composing something, it's just I need to move fast.
You care about the simplest solution that just you want something that works.
Right, and I know people who know gear, and it's I'd rather just ask them, what's your input? If I need something super crazy, I'd rather just ask somebody who actually is the kind of person who would sit around all day with a guitar and pedals turning knobs, who loves that. And that's again me saying that I'd rather delegate certain things. I mean, I came into this from strictly drumming. I've only been playing guitar for about 6 years, and I've been playing drums for 17. So it's I picked up all of these skills from scratch, and it's I got into synth pop because you could produce it at home. I suddenly heard these recordings, and I was like, you don't need a recording studio. You don't need a big budget. You don't need incredible skills. You can get a few good sounding plugins and you can make something that's dense and, is just as emotional as anything else. And I guess that was the initial seed for me, was hearing that kind of music and realizing I could produce it at home. And then from there, I've been able to add more and more elements to it that are, I guess, organic, if that's the right word, but more of a human component.
No, it's really good to have a network of people who bring different skills to the table. I think that's a really good way to work and a good ideology to have.
There's surprisingly a lot more people involved in this production than I had anticipated.
Yeah, because I was.
Yeah, it does really look like a one-man band, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, because when you said it was your brother who plays your drums, and then you've got.
Well, for the live show, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my studio right now, and I make everything, and I have that pro mixer friend who just did Sportsman. He usually masters my tracks when I can get him to. And then Peter. But I mean, for the most part, there was that Tame Impala interview recently with the what's his face, Kevin Barnes, saying that
Kevin Barnes, that
the band is a cover band. I don't go that far. Yeah, this is usually my thing, but it's not. It's mostly out of necessity right now. I don't know. When you I was in a band that was in a really bad situation. It fell apart, and it was this is how I started to cope with that. Was writing stuff that was just silly, and I didn't have to take all that seriously. And yeah, from there, I don't know. You develop a process, and I'm growing, and there are certain things that I'm gonna have to invite that guitarist friend in to play bass. I know that there's going to come a song sooner or later, where I'm going to say, I am not up to playing this bass part, and I want this to be as good as it can be. So I'm going to have to bring somebody in. I mean, that's a healthy thing, to accept. But I still ultimately want to be in control of what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it shows in the quality of your songwriting, definitely, to have it not just be you.
Sure.
And I think it shows very, very well, and especially with the Sportsman cover you did, which was produced very well, by the way. We were going to ask about that, how often do you have someone? You've already clarified that you have your professional mixer friend who masters your songs now, but
right. I paid him for my Girls Who Care record, which hasn't been released yet.
Oh,
I mean, that was, I mean, in the full timeline of how I got here. It was the fall of 2013, and he said he wanted to do a record for me. Mm-hmm. And, I had money at the time, and I, paid him up front for it. And, I did it, and it was great. And I went to New York City, and I did drum tracks with him. And after the cycle was over, I'm going to say I think it was July 2014 is when he wrapped it up. I posted a couple of the singles online, and I don't know, I guess I just felt really underwhelmed by, I had this really unhealthy assumption of what was going to happen because
Yeah.
several of the bands that he had just worked with had like blown up, like nothing. It was just like the track was posted on SoundCloud and it went viral, and it was just doing incredibly well. And I was thinking, okay, there's going to be some kind of cred attached to working with this guy. And so I sent it
Mhm.
out to as many labels as I could. He sent it out to as many people as he knew, and it was like just nothing was really happening. And
Yeah.
I didn't have to, I wasn't in a position where it was like, oh, I need to push this record as hard as I can or I'm going to sink. It was like a secondary thing in my life.
Mhm.
And it was a couple months after that that the TV themes like started blowing up online. And I say blowing up mildly because they've never been like massive successes, but it was like 20 or 30,000 plays
Yeah.
in one day kind of thing, and I was really really thrilled about that. And that kind of hit me. It's like, why am I trying to stand out? You know, good music is more ubiquitous than ever at this point, like because of technology, because of I don't know, I guess it's easier than ever to like find tutorials on how to learn to do this and that, and
Yeah.
it's not as difficult to produce a good sounding record anymore.
Yeah.
So for me to try to stand out, I'm not in like a big city. I didn't want to just hit the road endlessly to try to make this happen. It made
Mhm.
sense to me to focus on comedy because it was connecting with people. It was making me stand out in a way that like was not going to happen with the record on its own or without a tremendously lucky break. Like
Yeah.
some mega station playing it all the time or something. I don't like that. Just didn't seem like it was going to happen. And on top of that, a lot of the bands that guy was working with, they had these flourishes of success, but then it's like the label lost interest in them, or
They just
you know,
dropped off.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something about that I guess I feel lucky in some
Mm.
sense that like I didn't have that happen to me, because it would have just destroyed me to
Yeah.
like end up on a label and be like, oh, all of my dreams are coming
Everything's
true,
going. Yeah. Yeah.
and then just implode from there, because like that's a very
Yeah.
real possibility. Like this is doing it this way has forced like every little step that's happening is really solid. It's really, you know i- there's something about it that's, I don't know, it's different. It's not so chaotic.
I mean, you feel like you probably feel like you have like more control over the process too. I mean, you don't have to you don't necessarily have many people to report to do you? It's mostly like
No, I
equal
mean,
Yeah.
partnerships and
right. I mean that's part of it though. I've been doing this. I mean, I wrote, so from I quit my job in 2012 in IT,
is
and I
that when
wrote
you
erotica.
is
I
that when you just said, "Oh,
self-published
right."
I self-published
Oh, that's
erotica.
not.
Yeah, from 2012 until I guess it was January of 2014. So I've technically been self-employed since then, and it's like that's that basically, I mean, what I'll call my erotica training. I mean, it's like I had editors, I had cover artists. Like if I was going to make the best product, it wasn't all me doing it, and there were people I knew who were doing all of the stages, and it wasn't as good of a product. It's just
Mm.
like you can't, if you're not good at making covers, you're not going to make this salacious, sexy cover if you have no idea what you're doing. And like that's kind of important when you're selling erotica. So from there, it was just like I've been able to keep this afloat, without having to like split, any money I've made between multiple band members. It's
Mm.
like that's been the only reason I've been able to get to this point, and I'm hoping that it will eventually get to the point where like I can go on a tour and make money and pay the band members, part of it's like shielding people from that and not wanting to, like to take on all that risk myself. And then if it does pay off, if it does work out, then yeah, bring them in, lift everybody up together at that point. But like, it's not necessary like right now. I don't have to be playing shows right now. The internet's been a lot better to me than, begging random bars. I don't see exponential growth happening in the way that it can on the internet, by trying to do a bunch of little shows and hoping to get one or two people, each time, or a few people, or whatever, you know, a reasonable amount of growth is for like a band in Michigan. It's not to say, part of me is comfortable right now, and I've seen a lot of growth, and it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because like at the end of the day, I'm tired right now. I put a lot into this, and at the end of the day right now, I don't really want to do a rehearsal for 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't necessarily think that's going to benefit the work that I'm doing. And you know, there have been obvious, stepping stone moments. There's been Frank JFC, which, he drove like 2 or 3,000 subscribers. Then, Big Money Salvia, Internet Comment Etiquette, he drove like roughly 5,000 subscribers. And then Philip DeFranco just drove like 33,000 or something. This seems like tangible progress to me.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we opened for MC Chris here, which was incredible. Like, this was last March, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, we were just not doing any shows, and got offered this gig. Actually, Girls Who Care got offered the gig, and I was like,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is Hot Dad the band or?
well, that's what I said. I said Girls Who Care is probably not the right band for this show, but the right band for this show would be Hot Dad. So we did it as Hot Dad, and like that was an incredible show. That was like a show for 400 people, and it's like I wasn't having to, play bars 2 nights a week to build that up. Like, I just got offered that gig while I was doing what I was doing all the time anyway, and then we got offered a gig that was really exciting. I guess part of me just wants to just, if something is offered to me, then I tend to take it. But in terms of like begging people, I didn't like that when I got into erotica. It's like you put a book out there on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, and it just, if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, you're not begging people. You're not writing booking emails and saying, we draw so many people, man. I mean, we are a great band. You're gonna love us. Like, I don't like selling myself like that. I mean,
It
I'd
seems
rather,
disingenuous.
yeah, I'd rather just present my work, and if you want me, you want me. And so the shows that have been booked because people find my work, like they already know who I am and they're thrilled about it. And like that's the best case scenario for me, because I don't have to do anything. They're like, oh, we like what you do and we want you involved. And then I say, great, this is what I'd like out of a live show.
Yeah, that's a
So-
good way to be able to work.
And I
That
mean,
sort of
I
leads
won't deny that it's like in some sense, like a privileged position, but I feel like it's strategic. It's been a deliberate
Yeah.
choice on my part.
I guess this sort of led into the conversation where I was thinking of, I noticed on your Ninja Sex Party mega parody that they saw the video, they commented on it, and it was just like, I'm thinking, oh, I could see Hot Dad as a band touring, opening for something like that, and would you take the offer if you got it? But I guess you would. That answers
Yeah,
that
I
question.
don't. I mean, the thing with them, I've been pretty ambiguous about it. I mean, I am not like a big fan of theirs. I mean, I respect. I like
I
it.
have the same opinion. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, that cover can be interpreted both as like earnest or as like I made it and I thought maybe it was too aggressively mocky. And I mean, I had this internalized, I was making it, and I don't know. Again, it's hard to like, if people like something, there's not a big incentive to change it.
Mhm.
If people are obsessed with something that you do, and that is the case with them. Like, they have a diehard fan base, and it's really big.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we can talk about all of the Game Grumps, I think that they're in a position that's way luckier than most bands are, to get incorporated into a millions of subscriber video game channel. Like that's how that's definitely a quick way to grow. Yeah, I guess I was hoping for a stronger response from them.
I
because
was
Oh, it
too,
was
honestly.
really boggling to see like all these collaborations you were doing, all these connections you were making with, I guess, other fan base. And when we were thinking about this interview and talking about it, you're still on 17,000.
Yeah.
And for the connections you've made, it was really strange that you hadn't really gotten a massive influx until, I guess, Philip DeFranco.
I guess the hope that I have is that I'm being so authentic that like it's not the kind of stuff that like will just suddenly explode, but if it does, it will hopefully blow up in a way that's like not phony. I guess
Yeah.
I'm hoping to gain, fans who are super loyal versus
Yeah, so not like a fad kind of music or like a viral video for.
Yeah, and I mean it's like right now with,
Yeah.
with PewDiePie, like with all these YouTube algorithms, there's all of this discussion about what YouTube is doing to YouTubers. And it's like he's got 49 million subscribers, but the question is how many of them are active anymore?
Yeah.
And so, part of me wants a massive subscriber number, but I guess part of me is okay with having one that's like more realistic,
Yeah.
related
Yeah,
to
it's
the
a really good point.
interactions.
It does, like you kind of said, like a big subscriber number doesn't necessarily immediately translate to an actual fan base.
Right.
I mean, probably like as just about every like musician or like creative person wants, you want fans. You don't want people who just like show up to your show, tell you to play the one song, and then go.
Right. So, I mean, the whole Ninja Sex Party thing, I thought that was a good marketing move. Ultimately, they come from a different realm of comedy than I do. And, I figure if somebody made fun of me in that way, I would be really flattered, which was ultimately my final decision to do it. Like when I was debating, whether or not this was a good idea, that was my perspective, because I think that a comedy band or somebody rooted in comedy needs to be okay with somebody making fun of them. And that was my angle with it, was that I'm going to put a lot of effort into this, and that was just me calling in as many favors as I had. And yeah, I don't know, it didn't result in a ton, and then it was like I figured maybe they would tweet it or something, but nothing even happened other than them commenting on it, loved them or not. And it was like there was something fun about that. I mean,
Yeah.
people being like, no, he wrote that song Web Love, there's no way that he legitimately doesn't like these guys.
Trying to do some like CSI. What's his real intention?
Yeah.
Is he
So
with us or against us?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So I mean, again, like if they were to offer me an opening slot, yeah, I would take it. I mean, that would be crazy
Yeah.
for me not to, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can peacefully coexist, and that would, people make diss tracks and they make call out, and it's like this is the complete opposite of a lazy one of those. Like, I mean, it was Peter spent like a month on that video, and it was just like it went on, and it was like it took us like 8 hours to shoot all the footage for it, which is a lot more than like what most of the videos take. And I had to order, capes and all this random stuff for it, and it was like it was a lot of effort to make it. So yeah, that was my hope, was that it would generate some more attention. But I got Anthony Fantano in it, I got Jack Douglas in it, I got Frank Jeff C in it, I got Eric Big Money Salvia in it. I mean, I don't know. I was excited about that.
I like the video
exciting.
a lot.
Thank you.
I think it's probably one of my favorite things about it is the effort put into it to make it as fun as possible, to match as well. It's very well matched the Ninja Sex Party style of things, I suppose, from what I know of them. It's just costumes and silliness and dick jokes.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's exactly it to a nutshell, or to a T, sorry. And sorry, this is unrelated tangent, but I was going to ask earlier is how long does it take you to, like, you said this took like months, like a couple months to do this whole video. How long does it, on average, does it take to make the videos that aren't just you sending him a track, your editor a track, and he makes the little collage video for it?
I mean, well, for instance, like the Ken Bone one, that was literally 100% of that was done in one day. Like I got up and made a track within like 3 or 4 hours and sent it to him, and by like 4 p.m. that day, I mean, he spent like an hour and a half on that video, maybe. Like, so there's the extreme. I mean, yeah, one day, and then it's a lot of like him deciding how much work he wants to put into it, because like right now he's technically a volunteer, and it's like I've been trying to raise more money, you know, through the Patreon and stuff, that like he can end up hopefully doing this full time, just being the full time editor. Um, but yeah, so it's like it's up to him, like how excited he is, and we've had like, I guess I would almost call them arguments, because it's like part of me is trying to take this mercenary approach, and like when I was doing topical things more often, and like the election stuff, and like part of me was just trying to blow up the channel as quick as possible, like hoping that something, one of these like more shallow efforts would produce a bigger influx of subscribers or something, because like ultimately I'm trying to get him paid sooner, and I'm trying to get more money generated all around. And it's like we had these discussions where it's like, if he's in the situation he's in, he wants to work on things that are interesting to him. He doesn't want it to be a left brain effort of just throwing together a video. He wants it to be inspiring. So like Sportsman, he spent a long time on that video because he was really excited about the content. And like that's when I think that we shine, is like, yeah, when I make something that, now I've actually started to try and ensure that the lyrics have like interesting imagery in them that he can respond to, like more deliberately than I used to do that. But yeah, so it's up to him in that regard, and like I want to keep him interested, I want to keep him inspired, and then the best content comes out of that.
What would you say are some of your non-musical influences?
I mean, I like movies and TV shows, and I like to just walk. I meditate. Um, I mean, in terms of I don't I don't listen to a lot of music right now, and I haven't since I started composing full time. And it makes it something that's like, when I do sit down with it and I find something I really like, I'm like legitimately hungry for it, in a way that like I feel like somebody in my position needs to be cognizant of when he's receiving stimuli and when he's hearing a song. And I guess that part of this routine developed when I was writing. Like I couldn't write to music. And now when I write music, I'm obviously not going to listen to music while I'm writing music. Now, when I'm mixing or something, I'll listen to tracks as a reference, but I don't know, that for me became less of an influence the more that I wrote. So it's like when I actually do listen to something, I'm really excited to hear it. I try to take from it as much as I can. So it's like movies and TV shows, and just, I mean, that's my main source of stimuli right now, outside of just being on the computer, but like watching shows and watching movies. And I mean, it was just October, so I watched as many horror movies as I could over the course of the month. Like, that was, I guess, kind of a big source of influence for that month.
I'm thinking, like, are there any TV shows in particular, like, say, aesthetics for like movies? Are there any like movies that you think of, like, oh, I really like that visual style, or their how they score it, or how they wrote the dialogue? Do you take anything like that as sort of inspiration when you're writing your music, either the lyrics or the actual song itself?
I mean, I guess I'm an emotional person, and I'm not very I'm not very good at analyzing things, at least in my own opinion. I mean, I tend to connect with things, when it comes to a movie. Um, let's just say Drive. Drive, I really liked when I saw it in 2011. That was when I was really getting into like synth pop and stuff. And that movie for me was something that I felt more than I like experience. I mean, I don't know if I
It
would
was more
say
like
felt.
a holistic kind of thing rather than like an individual piece that was really the. It was like
I mean,
just the.
I'm never gonna like watch a movie and be like, oh, uh, he's invoking the spirit of so and so philosopher in this scene. Like, I don't necessarily go to those depths with things. I feel like I can, like, if I've identified something that speaks to me, like emotionally, that makes me feel something, um, then I might go explore those angles. But yeah, like that's the gatekeeper for me, is like, did it make me feel something while I was watching it? Um, I loved Twin Peaks, and I
You know,
loved the
you know.
score
Now
of
that you say that, I'm sorry, that just seems really obvious. I can't believe you didn't think of that sooner.
I mean, it's been a long time since I watched it. It was, I owned the box set. I got the gold edition box set. This is probably 2009-ish, I think, is when that came out. And I haven't watched the whole thing from start to finish since then, but I liked that. I mean, I liked The Wire. The Wire was, one of the few shows that that I did uh that I did a theme for, that I actually like really really liked. Like, I put a lot of effort into that version, or I mean into that song, just because it was like a show that I actually cared about. Um it's I guess it's tough for me to remember all of my influences. I'm not like a.
So you don't like intentionally when you start writing a song. You don't think like, oh, I really like this. I'm gonna do something like that. It just comes to you, and you just work
It's
as
more, yeah,
you go
it's
along.
it's kind of automatic, and I seem to be pretty good at like hearing something. I've done a couple like commercial composition jobs where like somebody sent me a song and said, I want you to mimic this. And I'm pretty good at like listening to something and then like just sucking it into my brain and then just like spitting it out in a different way. Like, there's this the Amiga. I don't know if you've. It was the Amiga home computer that came out in
The
like
computer.
1985. I did a song for the documentary. There's a documentary coming out. I think it's coming out in January, and I did this song like last January. But it was like the job was that they wanted a song like "Hungry Like the Wolf," and that they couldn't pay to do that song. So that's what I
Yeah.
did. Like, it was just.
Professional sound
And I mean,
alikes.
I could show you the song. Like, it's really silly to me. Like, it's
Yeah,
you
that'd be
wouldn't
great
think it
if you
was
could
I
show
I'm
us
anything
the
interested in
else.
song.
hearing it.
I mean, it's just an instrumental track, but like, I'm pretty good at like internalizing something and spitting it out in a way that you're not just like going. That one in particular is pretty much like nobody's gonna say, what is this? What was this inspired by?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I have done things where like somebody sent me a song and said, I want this to be like this, and I don't know. I guess I can just regurgitate it in a way that invokes the spirit of the original. But I mean, I guess that's how I've gotten to where I am. I mean, people say that I mimic styles, and I don't. I'm pretty lazy with a lot of things. I mean, I don't. I have a music minor, but like, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything about composition. I mean, I've become so lazy. It's like I can barely play the parts that I play. It's like I can get through them once or twice, but that's out of necessity. It's like my goal is to make the song. It's not necessarily that I love playing guitar. I
Hmm.
love making
Mhm.
songs. Like, that's all these things are just necessary elements to doing that. And I know that there are people who are like, I bought an acoustic guitar because when I get home from my job at the bank, I like to play and strum the day away. And that's great, but I don't love guitar like that. Like, it's I love it when it works. I love it when I've got a song going, and I've got a guitar part that's just exactly what I wanted. But the same thing happened to me with drums. It's like all of a sudden there was one day where it was like I went downstairs to practice and I was like, I'm not having fun anymore with this. Like, give me a band and I'll play with them. Give me a song that's already written and I'll write a drum part to it. But like sitting here and doing rudiments and listening to a metronome for the next 2 hours, like I don't feel it anymore. Like it just died suddenly. And that was like when this whole process began, I guess.
So would
Say,
you say that instruments to you are more of a means to an end?
Yeah, absolutely.
and for your songwriting, I think you've sort of answered this, but I'm wondering, do you ever create like a basic demo for the track first and then build from that? Like you have a core idea, or do you have like a fully formed song in your head and you're just like, I got to get this down as soon as I can? Or do you start with an original like melodic or rhythmic idea and then just build on top of that like quickly? You just think like, oh, that would be good here, and you put that out and you add that into the track and you just keep adding stuff.
I mean, the easiest way to explain that is that I might hear, you know, I'm not at all like where they talk about, like classical composers hearing the whole symphony in their head, etc. Like I might hear a chorus or something, but it's not until I put one part of it down. There are some times where like I'll have to start and stop. Like I'll be trying to just record the guitar part that I heard in my brain, and a bass part will already come out. Like I'll have to record that into my phone so that I don't forget it. Like we're talking stuff that's just super ephemeral, and I have to capture it as quickly as possible, or I lose it forever. Because like it's just a flourish that's there. I grab it or I don't, and so I don't demo in the traditional sense of it's never with a 4-track. It's never it is the same project file that the final song is. So it's just building that up, and it's one layer at a time. If I'm going to compose from scratch, I think I need a drum beat first. But if a guitar part comes to me, I mean, I will say that yeah, when I'm doing comedy music, it's usually a melodic vocal idea that comes to me first. And if it's not that, then I just sing gibberish over the existing pattern, and then I write lyrics to it later.
Do you
So
like to move fairly quickly when you're creating a piece? Or
yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily that I'm trying to get it done as quickly as possible, but there are certain elements that I think benefit from sleeping on it, and there are
yeah,
certain elements that I think just get them done as quickly as you can, because your first instinct is going to be the best one. And that's
yeah,
I've had times where I rewrite a part, dozens of times and go back to the first thing I did.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. If you let something rest, like, how long would you say usually? Like,
Uh,
what's the kind of time frame? I know it's gonna be different for each project, but like,
well, like I don't have a sense of smell. That track, I think I spent around a week on it. I mean, I,
oh,
I built the skeleton and just started fleshing it out, and it was
yeah,
just like it depends on how much I care about what it is. And I hate to say that like I'm choosing whether or not I really, really care about something or not. I mean, I think the ideal answer is that, everything I make is really important to me, but
yeah,
that's not necessarily the case. I mean, if it's something topical or it's something quick, or like even Bob Dylan, I didn't spend a ton of time on that because it was fun. Like
yeah,
I was literally working on that the day that the Philip DeFranco thing happened, and it was like I just needed something to stop. I was just losing it because I knew he was going to post something at 3 p.m. and I was just
mm-hmm.
sitting there just staring at the clock because I didn't know what it was going to be. He told me it was going to be a hard plug, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to be. I'm used to being disappointed by these sorts of things,
Yeah,
but I'm going to try to stay optimistic about this. And so yeah, I just needed to distract myself. And it's like the song that I made about Philip DeFranco was, I've been talking about it in like vlogs and stuff, but like my cat was really sick, and I was just like
yeah,
waiting for news from the vet, and I was like, I'm just going to make this. And just I didn't need to think about it that hard. And so I feel like the more times that I listen to something, the more things I come up with. And if a song is 5 minutes long, it obviously is more of a time investment for me to continually listen to it than a song that's a minute and 30 seconds. A song that's a minute 30 seconds I can listen to, basically 3 times as much in the same amount of space.
mm,
But I think mixes are the big thing that, like, if you do them in one day, you're going to make mistakes, um,
mm-hmm.
because your ears get fatigued. And by the end of the day, I've heard this song, 200 times or whatever, and it's like I'm not going to make the most sound mixing choices, which is
Yeah.
why I would rather sleep on that. But then something like, I don't have a sense of smell where I'm trying to write all these different parts to it, and I'm just trying to be as deliberate, rather than like just getting a lead guitar part in there. I'm trying to be really deliberate about it, and maybe trying a couple different things, or I put a lot of more care into that song because I guess it is legitimately a real song about me, and it was like it felt like the
Yeah.
right time to do that.
In your, because I kind of wonder about this because you said that you mentioned a few times that you played drums for a long time. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about that? Like what got you into it?
I wanted to play drums when I was in band, and I don't know what this test is. I can't remember what it is. It was like a test that said like they made us sit there and listen to tones and stuff. I don't know if this is a standardized thing that they give everybody before band or not. I don't know. I had it. I apparently did really well on it, and they wanted to put me on trumpet instead of percussion as a result. So I didn't play drums, and then when I was like 15-ish, um, I was friends with one of my close friends was friends with this band from my hometown. These, high school seniors or whatever that had a band, and they had a drum set, and I was hanging out with them then, and obviously it was, really cool to hang out with people older than me. And I tried to play Free Fallin' by Tom Petty on the drum set, and I could do it. And I was just like, what the hell's this? Like, how did I do this? And, it was like, I guess I had always wanted to play drums, but my dad, he would like rhythmically tap on things in a way that sounded like he could have been a drummer. Like, he had innate rhythm. And my brother is obviously very good at drums. I mean, I don't, it's hard for me to trust drummers after being one for so long. Like to find a drummer to be in the band.
Yeah.
So it's like he's somebody who I can trust fully, just
Yeah.
because of our relationship. But I don't, that was just something I loved doing for a long time. And I
So-
got really hooked on it, and I bought a cheap kit, like a $250 kit, and then I got like a $900 kit, and then I ended up getting a DW kit that I spent like $4,000 on. And my parents, weren't. I was like 21 at that time. I mean, I was commuting to college then, and I bought a $4,000 drum set. It didn't. They weren't really
Jeez.
feeling that, but
Yeah.
I still have it, and it was for me like a night and day difference. I don't know, you just care. You just give a shit if there's like a nice piece of equipment there.
So
And
then
a
when
drum set is something that I think a really shoddy drum kit. I don't know. Like there have been bands that the drummers use really cheap equipment, but there's something really, really special about a drum kit that like a guitar, you could have a really low quality guitar, but you could run it through a bunch of effects pedals and into a good amp.
Mm.
But a drum kit is a drum kit, like you can't
yeah.
Yeah.
cheat like that.
And you also mentioned how because you said that you went down to practice and you did like rudiments and with a metronome, and I know you said you were a music minor, so I wonder how far into the sort of more complex music theory, or at least drum theory, like did you buy books, did you
Yeah.
supplement like lessons?
I mean, coincidentally, my editor, I didn't answer that question earlier. My editor's in Minneapolis, and I'm in Michigan. I just met him online through the Hot Dad page. And then I actually had a drum teacher in Minneapolis who was in a band that I was really into at the time, called 12 Rods, that most people have not heard of them.
Wow, actually, we have
Yeah.
we have a couple people who are big fans on the radio actually of that band.
12 Rods, really?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, yeah, Christopher McGuire is like a close friend of mine, that drummer. Like I did 2 lessons with him in Minneapolis, and I went to the reunion show last year.
They had a reunion show? Oh no, I
They
missed
did,
it.
yeah, because Justin Vernon of Bon Iver reissued their Lost Time record.
Wow.
And he's responsible for that whole. He said he was listening to their album Separation Anxieties when he was in college, and so they were a giant influence on me. There was a band called Karuli. This was a cycle of things. Like when I was first getting into drums, there's a guy called John Vanderslice, who the drummer from 12 Rods was in John Vanderslice. He was his touring drummer, and he was on one of the albums. And then that Christopher McGuire, went to Japan to play with this band called Karuli. That was, I mean, they were great. And then he left, and then I discovered 12 Rods around then, and I ended up emailing him, and he invited me to come to a lesson. So the thing is, when I was doing a music minor, I didn't feel like I belonged at all, because, again, they weren't considering drum set an instrument. You had to be a percussionist, you had to be a vocalist. At that time, I wasn't. I took vocal lessons because I thought that it would help me as a because I would sing backing vocals, in the bands that I was in.
Mhm.
So I thought that would help with that. So I never really felt like I fit in with I did really well in the theory courses, and I guess it was me hoping to like take the knowledge of key changes back to my bands and teach, figure out how we can do a key change here and figure out how we can do all these cool things that we hear other bands doing. And I thought that it was a good use of my time, because I was salutatorian at my high school. Like, it was what do I want to say here? An A- was still 4.0. So
Oh.
I was salutatorian. We had like 11 valedictorians, and then I was the only salutatorian. So I went to this university that gave me a full ride because I was salutatorian. And so, yeah, it felt like a practical use of my college time, was to like do something that would benefit my band. But all of my drum training was self-driven. That guy, when I would go do lessons with him, he would give me a CD of songs to practice to. He'd write out, lessons. He would encourage me to try this and that. And that's how he emphasized his lessons. He'd be like, come do a 3-hour lesson with me, and you'll have a year's worth of material to work on. And it was true. I mean, that was the case. And I guess in the same way that I approach my composition now, it's like I was a good drummer, but I feel like it was only because I knew what I was capable of doing. There are a lot of times where you see a drummer who is just trying to play the most complex and difficult thing possible, and they don't totally have a grasp on it. It's like, it's a cool beat, but is the execution 100%? No. And I just tried to do things that, I could execute at 100%. And it didn't have to be the most difficult thing. It didn't have to be the most challenging thing. Sometimes some of the things were a little more challenging. And that's, I guess, what I've tried to do with Hot Dad is the same thing. It's like, whatever my innate talents are, I just try to focus on those things, because that's what I'm going to do best. If I tried to make a legit jazz song, I'm pretty sure it would fail. It would be a disaster. Like, it wouldn't. I could do it. I could, somehow throw it together, but it just wouldn't feel natural. It wouldn't feel right. And so I guess that's what my approach was with drumming, was to get through the phase of trying to do the most difficult thing possible, and then figure out what's a thing that can actually benefit me here, and how can I get really good at it.
Do you feel that you either rely on a certain singing style or section of your vocal range too much?
I don't. I guess I don't try to think too hard about those kinds of things. I mean, that in the same way that I'm not like that concerned about like what key a song is in. It's like there are times where I know I've ended up in the same key for multiple songs, but I don't care about that in particular. Like, there are some people who would, uh, you know, complain about those kinds of details, or they'd try to change them. But for most listeners, they don't care, and they're not gonna care.
Mhm.
And that to me is good music. Is not that you're necessarily sitting there saying like, is this, is this the best key for this to be in? You know, granted, there are times where vocal ranges stretch and they're not where they ought to be. Part of when I made that Girls Who Care record, I had never, it was my first attempt at making an album, and I couldn't really sing the songs. Like, I got them all ready to go, and it was a massive strain to sing any of them. And that's part of like why I haven't released that record. Like, just knowing all of what I've learned since I made it, I guess it stresses me out in a way to like know that like I should have put my guitar in E flat, and I should have written the song a half step down. And like, we perform those songs a half step down live. That's what I've always done. But you know, I don't know. I try to find, for a long time, I wished my voice was higher, and it was like the music that I was listening to, I couldn't really sing along with that comfortably. I mean, I'm a baritone, and I don't know, you know, I don't feel like I'm staying in any range that like I'm actually stopping to say, boy, I've been in this range too much lately. I mean, I try to use falsetto, you know, for specific reasons. I mean, I guess I've just developed my voice more than what it used to be. Like, I figured out like what the range is for me that isn't like singing an opera song or something. It was like I was practicing like these sort of things that are like vaguely opera-ish, or not. I don't want to say opera. That may not be the right word, but like classical stuff.
Or like choral.
Yeah,
kind
and
of
it's
stuff.
like I didn't necessarily like how my voice sounded, because here I am listening to, you know, rock and roll on the way to school, and here I am singing only choral stuff, and it just didn't feel like my voice was congruent with anything other than that. And then I guess I've just grown more comfortable with it, and it has, strangely enough, like started to take on like almost like a Weird Al texture. Like, at times, you know, Weird Al is one of my earliest comedy music influences, and I've like started to notice like there are sections that kind of sound very much so like him. And it's like I would never in a million years think that my voice sounds like his, but suddenly I'm getting this vibe from it that's very strange, that like I never would have ever thought that this is what the music would be sounding like.
Now, you've been doing this for a while. I mean, I know that you've been doing, you know, Hot Dad explicitly. What has it been now? It's been a couple of years,
Yeah, about
right?
2.5 years.
And for I was wondering about your composing or like your songwriting in general, because you said you were in bands for a little while. So did you ever, you know, come to those people and say, I've got this idea, or were you like writing songs on the side for yourself for a little while?
Um, I kind of ended up, well, so that's what I was saying. I was in a band that, it was my brother on bass, it was that same guy on guitar, I was on drums, and we had this lead singer who was just like out of control. It was a complete disaster. Like, I mean, it was a very, very bad time, and they quit, and I was left with this singer who I thought, you know, like somehow I'm going to harness his ability. You know, like if I stick with him, like nobody's probably stuck with him this long. And I'm going to do this. And we built up all of these like replacement bands. And it's like, you know, we got, you know, that guitarist I've been playing with since he was 14 and I was 16. And that was like 8 years or something into us playing together in every band. You know, it was always us playing together. And yeah, so this band dissolves. It eventually falls apart. And it's like, I moved to Ann Arbor where I am now with that guy, thinking that members here. And we just ended up like, it was over. Like, we got here and realized like we cannot work together. I cannot deal with him. But out of being tormented by him, I started learning guitar out of necessity so that I could teach other people how to play the songs that we were bringing in, because we didn't have any other members. Like, he was booking shows, this singer, but we didn't have band members. So yeah, I learned guitar out of necessity for that. But then once he left Ann Arbor and it was just me here, you know, everybody was gone. You know, it was just me here. And so I didn't really see anyone. I spent the next 2 years, you know, that was when I was just working IT, and that was when I wrote my first song ideas. There's one, I mean, there's one on the YouTube, Girl in My Hair, that was one of the first comedy songs that I ever made, like with Ableton and with like, I don't know, it was one of the first songs that I ever wrote, I guess. And so I spent those 2 years making stuff, and then I started showing them to those same guys that quit that band and trying to entice them back. And eventually it worked. I mean, eventually, you know, we all settled our differences and got back together with it. And, you know, while I was going through the phase of trying to figure out how the hell to do this, I think it was better for me to not have anyone else involved, because then I couldn't just run to them and be like, I need to figure out how to do this delay sound on the guitar, and I don't know how to play this part. And you know, I think it's when you do things out of necessity, or you learn them a lot quicker. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, I was just an island for a while, and then
So that was when you sort of started really writing down, like coming up, demoing ideas essentially to yourself, or
yeah, I mean, when I was in Saginaw, Michigan, that's where I went to college, and it was like after I had graduated, that's where I was with that band that dissolved before we moved to Ann Arbor. And I was literally using Sony Vegas, you know, the video editor. I was recording music in that. That was the Woman Titles, like that record was started there. Like I wrote a couple of those songs then. Like those were the first things I ever wrote. Just because I didn't want to deal with somebody trying to write serious music and trying to write the most epic ballad in history.
Yeah.
I couldn't cope with it anymore. Like there had to be something else, and I was under the impression that I needed mastering, engineering, mixing knowledge. You know, every recording session I had ever witnessed up to that point had been either in a studio or it had been meticulously done, and I just didn't think that I had that in me. And so it was just going for it and making things that sounded horrible for a while that eventually allowed me to get better. I don't know. You just keep doing what you're doing, and you find one small component that you can improve at a time, and eventually you get a package that is greatly improved, and you don't really even notice that part happening.
Yeah, it's really good to, I guess, take it incrementally.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, you talked about wasting a musical idea on something that's kind of comedy.
Sure.
When did you kind of like be okay with it? Like you found you were like comfortable in using those ideas for comedy?
I guess it was like, so I studied that Girls Who Care record in 2013. It was like the fall of 2013 is when I made it, and then April 2014 is when I went to New York City to do the drum tracks. And it was in that time span between the fall and that I started the TV themes. And you know, I think I did like 12 of them before I went to New York City. And the last one I did before I left was Are You Afraid of the Dark, which ended up being like so weirdly serious that, like, I don't know, it seemed like, you know, people were telling me that it should be a Girls Who Care song, and I was like, no, you know, it shouldn't be a Girls Who Care song. It's about a show called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it's like, well, nobody can necessarily tell that, you know, other than the fact that you've put it to the footage of Are You Afraid of the Dark? But so in that time period, I decided to commit to writing a song every day, you know, to test out my theory. Like, if you really want to make music, you need to be able to make it every day, and you think you can do this, so you better try. And I wrote like 60 demos for another Girls Who Care record in that time span while I was waiting for the album to get done.
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, are a lot better than the songs on the album.
Yeah.
Now, granted, like, you know, again, this is just me having this internal dialogue and being conflicted about it. But it was once I wrote all those songs, and I was like, there are so many songs just like floating around here. Like, I shouldn't be this concerned about like what a song is for. And I still get complaints. You know, there's still occasional YouTube comments that are like, you're wasting your talents on memes. Why do you do this stuff? Why don't you ever make a serious song? And it's, you know, again, there's so many serious songs out there. And I guess I kind of have like the David Byrne I don't know if you've seen the David Byrne self interview that was
Oh,
on
on
Stop.
on Stop Making Sense.
Yeah, where he's like interviewing himself and being like, "Hey man, why are your songs about nothing? Are they about like paper and
Like that's what I write about.
yeah?" And he thinks these facts and they're hard to represent, so he likes to pick a simpler subject. And despite me saying that I'm emotional, I don't necessarily have a ton of things, a ton of like agony to be channeling into song, and you know it's kind of easier for me to make the joke music just because I don't know, it just happens. It's more fun. I
Yeah, it
mess
sounds
with
like a very
grammar rules. I mean, I just
yeah
do whatever I have to make it done, and it.
yeah
But when it still affects me at the end of the day, like that's when I think I've done it right, because I'll write the stupidest song in the world, and I'm like imagining it or being moved by it. I'm like imagining it in front of a big audience who's really excited to hear it, and it's like this song is about a wrestler you don't even care about. Like
yeah.
there's something special about that I guess I don't see it represented enough in creative fields. I'm sure it exists, but like that's been my focus because that's something that I care about and something that I
Yeah,
want to.
no, certainly not a genre that's really been that tapped into.
Well, it's like
And
also,
it's
I mean, you write it because it's like you have fun doing this,
Yeah,
don't you? I mean,
yeah,
this is enjoyable. I mean, and you've had like a lot of practice. Your musicianship is really good. Your songs are very well written. They're very clever melodically, I think, and it's sometimes amazing how you manage to like slam together just like random lyrical ideas and not make it sound like completely stupid bullshit, even though it can be sometimes. Like
yeah.
in your McDonald's video.
I mean, that's
Right.
the perfect the fast food songs are the perfect example of like, to me, the more I thought about them, it was like, of all the things in the world, it's like a fast food restaurant. Like nobody really, if you have a preferred fast food restaurant, it's like most people just go there. It's like they're driving down the street and they turn into that driveway and they eat lunch there instead of the other driveway. It's not like they come home and they're like, "Oh man, I went to Taco Bell today. You will not believe it. It is incredible." It's just like a really weak association. I- It's not the kind of thing that most people are like, "Oh, I have got to make a song about Hardee's. I love Hardee's." Like that just doesn't really happen. And the fact that I'm not, a massive Hardee's fan, I like Hardee's. And
As
in
much
my
as you can
hometown,
like fast food.
yeah, in my hometown of 3,000 people, we had a Hardee's. And then McDonald's moved in across the street, and we all just abandoned Hardee's, which was the far superior restaurant. I mean, I haven't eaten at McDonald's in a long time, like years and years. But Hardee's I will stop at occasionally, like if there's like on the Ohio Turnpike. Like my girlfriend's parents live in Albany, so when we go to Albany, like I'll stop there sometimes. But yeah, like not the subject to get like super emotional about. I mean, KFC. I haven't been to KFC in a long time, and like that's I think one of the most emotionally satisfying songs I've ever written. I mean, I was just thinking about it today. Like it's just heartfelt for no reason. Like there's no good reason for that at all. And
You love that chicken.
yeah, I mean, I like that question can be asked. Like, why would you do this? And I don't know. I feel like if you can get somebody to ask that question, like you're engaging with them in a way that they're probably not used to. There's something unique about that kind of interaction.
yeah.
I think the next fast food restaurant you have to do is Arby's. They have a huge social media presence.
Yeah, they do. That that
Oh yeah.
that would be a good one. I mean, Hardy's ad reps actually, or like the company emailed me, and I don't know if you've seen the comments. Like, there's been all these questions about who is the guy in the video, and it's that site Pixabay,
It's
which
just a
has
stock image guy, isn't it?
yeah, he's the CEO, and like Peter just like got all these photos of him, and he's like ended up being like the mascot, in the videos that I'm not. He's almost been in videos as much as I have, and yeah, there's like Hardy's ad agency contacted me saying, we love the video, but we don't know who that guy is. We wanted to ask who he is so we know if we have permission to post this on our Twitter. And so, yeah, I was like, he's the, the founder and CEO of Pixabay.
That's cool. That's cool that they actually contacted you.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I want to hassle Taco Bell more this year. I don't know if you heard the Sometimes I Make Shit That Rocks remix that I had a friend of mine do.
Yes, I loved it.
Well, he's doing a Taco Bell Christmas remix, and
Oh.
so I have another Christmas song that's what I'm working on right now, and then we're gonna do that as well and try to hassle the hell out of Taco Bell, like via social media as much as possible with these two, with the original and this new remix. But I don't, ultimately, I'd love to say, like, I mean, I'm not like a corporate fanatic, like it's not, the goal is not necessarily to get somebody to buy the songs, but like I'm vaguely okay with that idea. Like if I can do something that would put money in the bank for the next 6 months, and then I can just make whatever weird stuff I want, then I guess I'd probably rather do that than like not do it.
Mm-hmm. It's like the actors that do the paycheck movies, then they go off and do whatever they want to do that people don't like.
Right. So, but I think if I'm allowed to have a sense of humor about it, etc., like, I have seen that, there are plenty of people who have like turned down endorsement deals. I'm trying to think of who I was. There's somebody's page that I was looking at that like, oh, it was Anthony Fantano, regarding I don't remember what the product was. It was something that he turned down the sponsorship because he wanted to present it in a humorous way, and they refused.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of what it was called either.
And I mean, like with him too, like, again, I don't really keep up with music that well. And part of it is I like being insulated. I like to control what's getting in and what's getting out, because inevitably you may end up like ripping off something that you're not thinking at all when you're doing it. And it's getting more and more, that a song comes out and somebody's like, did you really just come up with that? Also, it's so identical to this. And I guess I don't necessarily want to end up in those kinds of situations. So it's like when I'm controlling the flow of information coming in, but like, yeah, like having Anthony Fantano, it's like, I have seen his reviews, and I occasionally watch one on an album that I've actually listened to and I like, and it really flatters the hell out of me. Like, I did some music for his Sirius XM show that he has currently, and I don't know, I just get all nervous. Like when I made him, I made him a theme song and I made him a bunch of bumper music, and it was like, I was really nervous. And it's like the first draft I sent him, he's like, oh, I love this. Just, can you do this and this? And it was like, I had to mention, that it was on Sirius XM instead of Sirius Radio. It's like, those are like the kind of changes I was making. And there's something like, I never was seeking this kind of, I don't know, cred. But I don't know, it just feels really, really flattering, and it's not something I guess I ever expected to happen. But like, when I do something and somebody's like, oh, I love it, and I've just been so nervous the whole time, I don't know, like I'm getting better at that, but I still have anxiety quite often regarding like somebody requesting something.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure in that kind of situation.
I mean, most people are nice, and they're not, you have a persona as a reviewer, but in one-to-one interactions, I've talked to him on the phone, and he's just a nice guy that I like to interact with. And
he talks a lot.
Yeah.
He talks a lot. We know. We've talked to him before.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can tell that he's in the right medium for what he wants to do. I mean, like, that's the right format. There was an interview just recently. What was it? It was just published. That was like a big article with him, and
oh, the spin one.
Yeah, and that was like really interesting. I mean, I liked hearing about the rise of it all, and I've never been a huge fan of music publications, and I've never been a huge fan of being really pretentious about things, and
He
like
changes your
that's
mind.
yeah. So just not having a huge emphasis on that. I just want to make a good song at the end of the day. Like that's it. Um, I don't think I'm capable of doing interesting things if I try to. So I set my goals, modestly. I just want to make a song that people are going to enjoy. And sometimes there's, a really nice moment in there, or I've started to get, a little more experimental with the bridges, or I'm willing to take a little more of a risk here or there. I mean, I was raised on singles, and you know, my dad used to buy albums and he'd listen to one song on it. He didn't like anything else on the record.
Yeah,
And
it was
so,
cheaper to just buy the record back then.
yeah. So, I remember he bought the Best of New Order, and I always talk about this. The only song he ever listened to on there was Regret, and Regret is one of my all-time favorite songs, and I love it to this day. And I like some of their other catalog now, but it was strange to me that we just went from song to song to song to song of him just skipping it, and then that was it. And I don't know. I think of singles when I'm think about growing up, other than like Weezer's The Blue Album. Like it wasn't until there was a big phase before I was allowed to make any choices that like I just heard singles. That was it. You know, 6, 7 years, 8 years, whatever, until I finally got a couple albums of my own.
Well, speaking of personal favorite music, we hear that you're actually a huge fan of Steely Dan. Is that true?
I've had my Steely Dan phases for sure. I mean, I don't think
Phases.
I don't think I'll ever not like Gaucho and Asia and stuff like that. Their drummers were some of the best of the best. And when they came back in 2000 or whenever it was, they brought in another incredible drummer, Keith Carlock, who was another drummer that I was really into. I don't like drum solos, but I like Keith Carlock's drum solos. They're like groove based, and they're funky, and they're like a beat instead of like, look at my tricks. Look at me go around the kit really fast. So that, and then Jeff Porcaro, who is like one of the 80s biggest drummers. And I mean, he's like the backbeat of the 80s. There were a few people like him, but like he's the one who played on Beat It. Like about
Okay.
an
I know what you're talking
important
about.
beat. It's that. And that's a simple beat to play, but it had attitude, and he was in Toto, and he in 1975 was on Katie Lied with Steely Dan as a 19-year-old. And
Yeah.
prior to them coming back with Keith Carlock, he was the only person to be featured on an entire Steely Dan record. And he was 19,
That's
which is
crazy.
which is stunning. And it's like he didn't I don't there was there's a track on that album called Your Gold Teeth 2 that is it's a shuffle. I mean, it's like a waltz shuffle beat. And it's like when I was trying to learn how to play drums, when I was trying to learn how to play jazz style drumming, it's like the real jazz records, a lot of them are just one microphone in the room, and it's hard to hear what's going on the kit. Like sometimes it can be hard to work out what is going on. And it's like they impeccably recorded him playing this jazz waltz. And I learned so much from that beat, from that track. Like it is like one of the most significant tracks in like me as a drummer. And this is a 19-year-old kid playing it. It was just like he's emulating, a jazz style, but it was cleanly recorded, and I could just hear everything about it, and it made sense to me because it was like it was all there. It was presented well. So that, and then I guess their obsession with perfection is really fascinating. I mean, just some of the weirdest music, and then like the track Gaucho, like the story behind it. I don't know if you know the story behind it. Like it was like the studio band had been playing it all night. Like they tried to play it they had done like 50 takes with the full band, and Donald Fagen was not having it. Like, was like, this is not working. So they just did, like, they stayed all night and just did more and more and more and more takes. And it's like, we're talking about, it was Jeff Porcaro on that track, and they ended up like editing his drum track. It had like 100 punch-ins. Like, that's how obsessive they were. And like, this is one of the world's best drummers. That's what they needed out of the finished track to be okay with it. And so, I don't do anything nearly as advanced as them, but like when it comes to like wanting to hear like essentially wanking in a confined format, because I like when weird stuff happens in more or less a pop song. I don't necessarily like it to meander for 10 or 12 minutes. I'll lose interest. But if you compress it, like, that's the perfect way to present that kind of material. And so sometimes if I do something weird, yeah, it's like, give me a good setup, give me a good riff, and then I'll just make a weird bridge. Like, that'll be my time to do something weird. But then I come out of it and I go back to something that's easy to listen to or whatever. I mean, not that I've done anything all that weird, but I've had some chords that I don't necessarily know what's going on. Like, I can't explain it at all from a theory perspective.
Well, some of those strange elements, poppy elements, are somewhat reminiscent of Gary Wilson. If you ever taken any.
Are you familiar with Gary Wilson? Is what he's asking.
I am not.
Oh, he's a synth pop artist. It's something that Carpenter here wanted to ask, as his profile picture is a picture of Gary Wilson.
Yeah, because Gary Wilson was. I mean, hopefully I'll remember this correctly. He was actually a little bit like you. He was kind of a sort of a bedroom musician who I'll be honest, I don't know much about his recording processes in his recording philosophy, but he did a lot of stuff. He played all the instruments himself. He had like his brother to do. He had like some close friends to do the mastering, and he basically just made an album of a bunch of sort of weird crosses between pop songs with like jangly like synth elements a little bit, and then he had some weird like not sort of comedic, but also kind of like weird noise collage kind of things. And I was just wondering, and I was kind of wondering if you took some inspiration from him, if you'd heard of him.
No, I've never heard of him.
I think the question was a general, like, is there any like outsider synth people? Like you just covered Harumi Hosono, who is a classic, Yellow Magic Orchestra guy, big name in the synth pop world. I mean, who do you take influence from in the synth pop realm? You mentioned you got into synth pop, I guess, somewhat later in life, like in college. It sounded like.
You also mentioned you enjoy New Order.
Well,
too.
yeah, there's New Order. I mean, I like 80s music. I mean, the Cure, I guess, would be one of the bigger ones in terms of like albums still to this day that I really, really like. Wish is definitely one of my favorite records ever. I mean, I'm trying to think of here. So like there was this thing called the Valerie Collective, is what it was, this blog that there was a group called Honorok that was this French musician that, like, he was an engineer and he just decided to make his own music, and he did some remixes that I thought were really, really cool. And then there was this Russian band, or they still exist, called Tesla Boy, that had one song that like really, really hit me. And this was like 2009, 2010. I guess M83 was like the first band that I heard doing it in a modern context, that like I really, really like Kim and Jesse, and like I heard that track at like a really good time in my life that like I was just like, what is this? I don't know. There's just something about it that there's something a little more barren about the production of like 80s tracks that, like, I guess maybe it's just the analog versus digital thing, or recording techniques, or I don't know what it is in particular. It's like you could have a synth sound that still leaves a track feeling pretty barren and empty, whereas like the modern production style is to drench everything in reverb and really fill everything out. And
Brick Wallet.
yeah, and I've since scaled that back. Like, I think my productions, I've gotten more comfortable with my voice. I've gotten more comfortable with everything in a way that, like, I'm now cutting back the reverb and the delay, and I'm trying to be more deliberate about applying it. Not just blanketing it across everything. And that's made my mixes, I think, a lot better. And that was that same guy from New York City, encouraging me, like, if you're going to use delay or something on your vocals, don't just throw it on the whole track. Choose a moment to emphasize it or something. And like, I feel like that's helped me a lot. I'm just going to scroll through my list here a little bit of my big music folder and see if anything jumps out in terms of like the 80s. I had a Frank Zappa phase, but it kind of fizzled out. There are Frank Zappa songs that I do. Punky's Whips is one that I always return to.
When you mentioned a song going for like 11 minutes in a whole different direction, I immediately thought of Frank Zappa songs, and I wanted to sit there and say, "Oh, Terry Bozzio must not be your favorite drummer," but I wasn't sure if you would get the reference.
Yeah, well, I mean that song in particular, I'm okay with. It's again, it's like it's the context in which you're, that you get the introduction. And Punky's Whips is just really, really silly. And there's the video of on the baby snakes that. It's such a bizarre song, and Adrian Belew on stunt guitar, like running around the stage in like a dress, and it's just an incredibly bizarre performance. And there's something about it that I really appreciated. In terms of like, I think it's pretty safe, even without me digging through stuff. Like, there isn't a ton of like outsider music that I've ever really been into. I'm sure there have been songs at times. I'm really trying. Oh, the Tubes. Are you familiar with the Tubes?
Yes, absolutely, I am. That their first album is one of my favorite things of all time, and I actually thought of them when you said weird things that happen in a condensed format in a song that's presented to you, and that record is like the key of that whole style of all these key changes and time changes that are condensed into a 5 to 6 minute song.
Right.
And it's very well done.
And it was what is it? Is it Remote Control, the Todd Rundgren produced record?
Yes, I think so.
That's the one I like the most. The first album is really crazy though too. That's another very bizarre band. I got into them because I found out about there's the drummer Prairie Prince
who
played on some XTC records.
Yes, that's right.
And I like XTC. I will say that I like them, and they are one of the few bands that I think. They have songs that I'm not thrilled about, but they have moments that are exactly what I like, that lead into sections that are beautifully weird. And I think that that's the right balance for me. Like that kind of band. I guess they would be a good example of one. I mean, I have been that song King for a Day. They did their first shows in like 9 years.
Sorry.
On Letterman in like '89 with the house band. It's a really great performance, but I've gone back to that like quite frequently, that performance in particular. That's a good one.
That is great. I think about the Tubes a lot recently, in that
they're really, really skilled. I mean, they were really good at what they were doing.
They were really popular at one point too, and I feel like they fell off the face of the earth in terms of musical knowledge, things that people remember of the past. They kind of just fell off.
What was the She's One in a Million? What was
She's a Beauty. She's a Beauty. That was the hit song, the biggest hit song they ever had, and that came like '83, I think. And I don't necessarily like that song. I think that's when Fee Waybill just sort of took the band into a whole direction that just dive bombed from there. But
they started losing members.
They had like originally 15 members to begin with. Yeah. So they could have afforded to lose a few. They lost like a couple backup singers on the second record, and then I don't know. From there, my dad worked at A&M at the time while they were recording there, and he saw them a lot in the studio. So. He at the time, it's just the only reason I think I know them is because he was there at the time and he heard them and he was like, "Oh wow, this is a cool group." Just luck of the draw, I guess. Yeah. Because you can find Tubes records for nothing and no one knows or cares about them anymore.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the kind of band that I'm a little surprised they haven't had like a big, sudden revival or a big renewed interest in them, but. I don't know if it'll happen. I mean, again, if you've got that many members, you could really screw up for a long time before you're down to like a normal band size. But there was such chaos like in those recordings, and just I don't know, just a lot of energy that I feel like you can't really emulate in a live show without dozens of people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's why it's good to not start off with 15 people. Maybe you just start off with 4 and then grow from there.
Yeah, talk.
Professional.
I was about to ask, something like Spirit of Eden or It's My Life seems something that would be right up your alley.
I mean, I think I'm more living in another world off the that's one of my favorite songs of theirs. Just the Spirit of Eden is I think like remarkable, but it's like almost so remarkable that I didn't even appreciate it. Because like knowing like how much of a disaster it was commercially, and like that singer like seems like one of the most tormented people. Like he just seems to be he like is his voice. I mean, there's just something about him that seems so sad. And I guess to make a record like the Spirit of Eden and like have that background that like it was a complete failure.
Does
Or
that
was it?
upset you to see like records that you feel there's a lot going into it, and then to see them fail, not sell very well at least?
I guess I don't know anymore. I mean, if it reaches the audience it's supposed to reach, it sucks when things don't happen when you want them to. But like with the 12 Rod show, that reunion show was at 7th Street Entry, and there were like 1,300 people there. I mean, it was like people had flown from all around the world to come to that show.
Yeah, they had I remember 12 Rods very vaguely when I was very young. I'm much younger than you, but I remember them being a thing, a name that I saw somewhere, and I just never heard of them again until sometime in the last 5 years maybe. And they have a niche fan base that's just still there. It's still a bunch of people around your age and maybe younger.
Yeah.
Who were into it in college, and it's like, wow, this is my favorite band in college. I'm going to go see them, how they're reuniting for a show.
I mean, the thing that gets me is that they were V2 Records' first American signing. I mean, they were the first band signed by V2 Records in the United States, and it was a big money deal. And because like I've talked to that drummer, like I actually have a box. I'm not kidding about this. There's a documentary about the band that's being produced by one of the brothers of one of the many bassists. And this is completely legit. That drummer was going through a tough point in his life and didn't want to think about 12 Rods anymore. And he sent me and my brother a box of just stuff from the era, stuff that he didn't want to see anymore. And I mean, I'm talking about like everything, like broken pieces of equipment, set lists, insurance cards,
Wow.
just piles and piles and piles of documents. He sent a box. We have tons of bootlegs. We have DAT tapes. We have all this stuff from them. And so my brother, was being more cognizant of this documentary, and it was really funny that the guy making the documentary made an update post and was like, the documentary's coming along, whatever. And then my brother sends him this box, like asking him, is like, maybe this will help you with the documentary. Here's a box of stuff. Sends it to him, and then he made a post. He's like, I'm going to delay the documentary for the next like 4 months because I just received a box with like more stuff than I know what I'm even going to do with. I mean, there were bags and bags of photographs from recording sessions, like the original photos that were taken. It was like I had all that stuff, and yeah, we sent it to them to the documentary, and I don't know when the documentary is going to be done, but I'm pretty excited about it because I mean, they recorded with Todd Rundgren at his studio for their second album, and the label just destroyed them. Like just pushed all the wrong songs, gave out more CDs than they sold. And Ryan Olcott, that lead singer, he has some serious skills. I mean, in terms of modulations and being clever with a composition and his guitar parts are just brutally hard to figure out because of like alternate tunings, and there just aren't many bands like that that have ever really existed. And I guess, yeah, it is really disappointing that, like, to hear him talk about when they signed that record deal, and like they're all crying. He has photos of it that he sent me, and then it just bombed. It just was a complete disaster. So I don't know. I don't know what their lives would be like. Like, they are somebody that I know directly that maybe would have had a much better life if the band had been a success. But I guess I never would have met him, and I never would have probably connected with the band in the way that I did had they just been another mainstream entity. It was a cool thing for me to discover it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, in terms of, yeah, if something finds its proper audience, I think that that's great. But everybody wants, nobody wants that initial disappointment. I guess it's just, I'm living it right now, which is that you make something and you love it and nobody sees it. And that, I think, is the hardest part of the creative process, is that you start doing something and you have good taste when you start doing it, and you know that you're terrible. And once you get past that phase where you actually start to get good at it, nobody cares and you can't find anyone to care. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's been strange for me, because I remember back when I used to try to share stuff, I used to go post things places, and most of the time people would just shit all over me and tell me to get out of there and what am I doing here. And there's this, it took me a while to figure it out, but it's like, it's very bizarre that so many people who shit on things on the internet are just like, yeah, well, I don't make anything, but if I made something, it would be fucking great, man. It would be the best thing that's ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, it doesn't exist. Like, that idea doesn't matter to anyone. It really just
Yeah.
doesn't count. Um, and so once I figured out that, like, most of the people who treat me like shit are basically just people who aren't going to make anything, and they're just going to rip on me. They're going to tear down
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I made. I don't, it's like I was on the Something Awful forums for a long time, and I tried to post the TV themes while I was making them, and people were like, "What is wrong with you? Why would you do this?"
Where'd you post
And
those?
then I made a thread, like, after I stopped doing them. After I stopped making them, I was like, "Okay, I'm bulletproof now. Like, this isn't going to affect my day-to-day, process. I'm not going to get depressed about this now. I'm done with these." And I posted them, and it was like 4 pages of just like, how does it feel to have wasted, hundreds of hours of your life making something that is completely worthless. Like, that's what the comments were like.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden they started getting positive, and then Gawker picked it up from there. It was like,
Mhm.
I just suffered through 4 pages of everybody just ripping me to shreds. And then, yeah, suddenly then Gawker picked it up, and then that's what drove the initial influx that made me think, like, maybe I should try to do something with this.
It's strange how the internet works, where the reactionary comes in. That's the first wave of people that come in, and eventually someone will hear it, and then it's like, "Oh, I like this," and then you just get more and more people who say they like it more, and then those numbers add up.
Yeah.
And the people who don't like it say they don't like it once, and they make a big deal about it, then they never pay attention to it again.
Right.
And that's pretty much how all YouTube works. And I find it funny to see people who don't. I think people are sometimes confused on your videos whether it's like you said before, how genuine you are, and they get sort of like, this is common music, but he seems to also care. It puts people off to some degree. I don't know. It happens a lot with music that people have trouble distinguishing certain groups like Ween, who say that they're not a comedy band. They're just a band who likes to put humor in music sometimes. They like to be
Sure.
silly.
Or a more contemporary example of that would definitely, in my mind, be Mac DeMarco.
Mac DeMarco is also that way. He's very silly. Very, very silly.
I like him a lot, actually. He's one of the few modern bands that I really like.
He's really interesting. He's really interesting. He's fun live. I definitely think he's a fun live show.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and he's another one that I get conflicted about, because his audience, he has it so sweet in that he can record at his house and reach a massive audience.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me gets a little annoyed that like what he does never really evolves because the audience doesn't want it to. But part of me, because it's like the first two records I loved, and then another one or whatever that EP was called, I just didn't even really. There's like no real change between it and Salad Days, and his audience wants more of that, and I commend him for doing it, and he's kind of an underdog, in the music industry, who has risen, as high as an underdog really can,
Hmm.
and he's still doing it without, all of the bullshit bureaucracy, and there aren't many voices, there aren't too many opinions involved in his music. So for somebody like that to rise so far, like I think that that's something that I need to celebrate, and I think is something worth caring about. In that, like, I want him to do well.
Of course.
I want him to do well because, like, it's, it could happen for any of us, kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, and I get what you say. I understand the feeling about Mac DeMarco, or you want him to evolve to do something different, but I guess he's probably going to answer the whims of his audience because that's who loves him.
and he's a people person. Like, I found out about him because of his silly interviews. Like,
Yeah,
at
he's very
Pitchfork Festival.
charismatic.
Yeah. And so you've got, he just played at whatever Festival Supreme or whatever. Like it was
Mhm.
like what, Weird Al and
It was a lot of people at Festival Supreme that gets put on by Tenacious D, and they just book everyone they know in the comedy business and music business.
yeah,
They had the Flight of the Conchords there. They had Weird Al. They had Fred Armisen's new Talking Heads parody band thing. Eric
yeah, and
Andre
then
was
Mac
there.
DeMarco, and
Yeah,
that's
Mac.
like, I am so envious of that. Like that would be, man, to play a show like that. I mean, like with that kind of audience. Because when I said I opened for MC Chris, like I make things in relative isolation, and uh, I had a monitor hooked up to the MacBook Pro that I was running the show out of, and I had lyrics on it. And granted, it fucked up a whole bunch during the set, and I had to keep stopping and like troubleshooting in front of like 450 people, which was incredibly difficult. Um, but I'm doing like, I was watching the tour as it went on, and I was looking at pictures that people posted, and like that's how we decided what TV themes to do, because like somebody posted a Darkwing Duck shirt, and he posted it on there and was like, this guy wins this show, etc. And so I I chose Darkwing Duck because of that, and like, you know if you don't know the song, I mean, it's just like him having sex with Darkwing Duck. I mean, like, that's what the song's about. And it's like from when it starts, you don't necessarily know where it's going. And it was the first time in my life that like I had like a secret. I had a trick up my sleeve. And it's like the audience is looking at the monitor, and I'm performing this, and I'm getting to these silly lines, and like they're laughing at them. I'm like, okay, I'm about to say something really silly. And then they responded to it, and I was just like, I mean, I couldn't. I slept poorly for like the next 3 days because the adrenaline rush was just like out of control. And there was just something so unbelievable about that like just, flattered me to no end. I don't know, to present yourself like that with a screen, and be like, here's where the laugh, it was like almost like having an applause sign, or a laugh, the laugh signal.
Yeah.
And
Gotta
it
flash.
worked.
Laugh at my jokes, please.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's just something special about that, and having a comedy audience, or having an audience that's there to see a comedy artist, is obviously going to be way more receptive.
I think a comedy show would probably have more reception from people, because I think people's guards are let down when they know they're going there to feel silly.
Right.
I'd be able to connect to them on the melodic level, or like like in their head, you'll be able to get those catchy songs in there better, maybe because they're more willing to absorb what you're presenting to them.
I don't know. I mean, that's in some ways it feels like vaguely like cheating to just be like, well, I don't think of myself as the best player of instruments, and whatever this and that in terms of ranking, and I don't know, assigning a point value to things. to just be like, well, I'm going to approach this from a comedy angle. But, one of my biggest things, and this is way up there for me, like in terms of things that I've actually worked out that I really care about. And it is the fact that a lot of comedy bands, so on the one hand, you've got acceptance. That's what you were just saying, that like a comedy crowd is more forgiving. Like they're not going to see the most perfect band performance. They're going to laugh. They're going to have a good time.
Not trying to be
Mistakes.
cool.
Yeah, mistakes could be fun. Mistakes could be silly. But so my whole thing is that like I started posting music as Hot Dad because my mixes weren't great, and it's like people would be more accepting of the blemishes. The thing is that I think that there are a lot of mid-tier comedy bands, some that we've discussed in this show, that grow very large, and they don't put really any additional production into their mixes. They don't master anything properly. They don't even bother, to go beyond the bare minimum because they
Right.
know the audience is going to eat it up. And that to me is something that I want to not do that. I want to actually reinvest and make a very polished record, a very polished Hot Dad record, with the same guy who did my Girls Who Care record. I want to make a record that would be more or less indistinguishable from any other record on in the background at a party, but one that's once you figured out that it was a comedy album, you'd never think of it as a serious album again.
Mm.
And so I want to be concerned with that because there are, Flight of the Conchords, Lonely Island, whatever, that have actually put, the money into their recordings. They've actually hired good producers. They've actually hired teams that make a good quality product. But then there are a lot of people who obviously have the budget to do it who are not doing it. And
Mhm.
that I guess really bugs me because I think that as I evolve, as my Patreon grows, as I get more money, I don't want to be static. I don't want to just continually put out the same standard of music. I want it to get better in some regard. And in terms of accessibility, the more polished something is, the more likely people are going to are going to just give it a chance by default. Like if you put on if you say, "Hey man, check out my band," and it's a shitty recording from your garage, people are going to lose interest fast. But if it sounds like something, off the radio,
Yeah, it's because they're expecting less. They get something that's way beyond what they expected, and it's interesting.
right? So I care about that, and that's like why I want things to expand, is because I want to be able to pay people to mix and master and do that every time. I'd
Mhm.
like to have that level of consistency. I'd like things to grow. I don't just necessarily want to be. I don't know. I didn't get in this to be just a YouTuber, and I've considered it now. But being somebody like doing the level of quality that I'd like to do is not something that I can do. 3 videos a week or something. I just can't do that at that quality level.
Yeah, no, you would be rushing yourself if you tried to go too many videos at a time. The songs wouldn't be fleshed out as much as you probably like it or whatever.
Sure.
It makes sense. I understand what you're going for.
So that's like my thing, is that I care about mixes, I care about mastering, I care about these things, and I've learned a lot about them, and I know that a professional is always going to be able to do it better than I can, and they can inject it with an attitude that I may never have come up with. And that's when I think about like records like Dave Fridman's production,
Mm-hmm.
like on the Flaming Lips records, like that production has a personality in itself.
It
And when I
does.
realized that, that other records he had touched sound similar, suddenly it's like he's an honorary member of each band that he joins.
Mhm.
And that was, I don't know, that was just something super interesting to me, is like when my producer when that mixer friend guy was touching the tracks, they just felt different. and it was great. It was a good feeling.
What was for
Oh,
breakfast?
actually,
Today,
yeah. I was just
Yeah.
wondering, what
I-
is your demographic?
How are you?
Like,
What is your what's for breakfast?
I didn't
First
have
two
breakfast. I
questions.
mean, I just had green tea.
Do you watch anime?
Yeah, that's another. That was another one that was in there.
I just watched Akira like 4 months ago. That may be the first
That was it.
anime thing I've ever seen, to be honest.
You like it?
That's the list.
I did.
That
No, I'm not-
pause tells so
I don't-
much.
dominating them.
I mean, I'm just saying that I had an expectation of what I thought it would be. I mean, it's beautiful.
It is. It is.
I guess I've been told that, you know, obviously anime is as varied as any other genres. I mean, it's like whatever you're really into, you can probably find an anime that covers that. I mean, is that correct?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, there's not just specifically, you know, it's not specifically Sailor Moon or I mean, it's like there are big things that exist, but then there's a wide variety of things. I don't do a lot of animated stuff, honestly.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And I don't-
Not everyone does.
I don't have a problem with it in particular. I just don't necessarily have a ton of interest in it. Akira was on. There was an anime. It was like I believe it was like the mid '90s. It would play on late night TV. It was like a male
Nami.
Nami or something would play it.
Do you guys
Well, no.
still-
It was a male. It was like get the best anime movies shipped to your house. It was like
Oh, I know what
Oh.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Actually,
and they always
I know
showed
that.
clips of Akira and the motorcycle pulling up and things exploding. Yeah, and I always had that like embedded in my brain, and I was like, well, I guess I'll watch Akira.
Yeah, yeah. I remember those like advertisements. It was always like Ghost in the Shell, like Gundam and Akira and
Yeah,
everything like that.
Yep. Yeah, Ghost in the Shell.
And God, I had older siblings who had friends who were really into those services, and they got the bootleg Dragon Ball Z imports from Japan before we did. So they had all those. And so I didn't know what was going on, but people were telling me that all these things of the show that haven't happened like by far. There was villains that weren't even introduced yet that I had no clue was happening. It's strange how. Sorry, I'm going off on something else entirely now.
That's
I
fine.
lost track.
That's fine. I mean, there's I don't mind like whimsical films.
Hmm.
It's like The City of Lost Children. I liked that, and I liked Brazil for a while, and but I haven't. I don't know if it's been a patience thing or what, but I just haven't been that much into fantasy related things in a long time.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I mean, I never watched Game of Thrones. I did read the first book, but it was too many characters for me to juggle.
I didn't watch Game of Thrones at all either. I had this thing. It was so far in by the time I started like noticing it. I was just like, I'll just wait till it's over, like I did with The Sopranos.
I did watch The Sopranos. I did actually watch that last
Sopranos
year.
is good.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, it's a good one in that you know, a lot of people know about it, and it's good that you can say you watched it.
Mhm.
I find that not that many people my age have watched The Sopranos all the way through.
Really?
It's sort of. Oh, I'm younger. I'm only 23, so
Okay.
it's not something I think people my age really watched. Now it's because especially with now the new Netflix generation of HBO things, all these new HBO programs, all the Breaking Bads and stuff. I think Breaking Bad is the new Sopranos for this generation.
Yeah.
That's the big show everyone says you have to watch. It was the best show on TV, and it ends so dramatically and all that.
I did like Breaking Bad. I actually
That's a good
stayed at an Airbnb of one of the actors in
Oh,
Albuquerque.
really?
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the guy who who gets his throat slit by Gus in season 4.
Oh.
His name
Wow.
is what's his name? Yeah, I'm blanking out right now what his name is, but he was also in like Natural Born Killers as like a 10-year-old. But we were staying there when we looked at his name is Jeremiah Bitsui. That's what his name is. We saw his name, and my girlfriend was like, "Oh, I wonder, you know,
It's the same guy.
who this guy is," and looked him up and was like, "Oh my God, that's who it is." So yeah, we stayed at his apartment, and I brought it up to him because I didn't know. Like, we're trying to be, professional and not awkward, but it's like I'm probably not going to see him again after the first night. He gives us the keys, so I did ask him. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, there was a woman who stayed here, and she was like, I recognize you from something, but I don't know what." And like that was how the conversation ended. And then I asked him about it, and he has like a construction business, and then he also acts occasionally.
That's cool.
He had a beer. He had a beer that he premiered like a month after we were there.
Oh wow.
There.
His own brand of beer?
No, it was just there's a brewing company there called Marble that it was like the Breaking Bad IPA, and it was him because he was
Of course, it was an IPA.
the only local celebrity there or whatever, but who was still left there. But
I don't know anyone who stayed in Arizona after they got famous.
It
unless they
was-
owned a mansion.
it's the number of places in Albuquerque that were used on the show that are just like the place we were getting coffee every morning ended up being in season 1 where Walter White throws down the thing and blows up the room. That was the coffee shop we were going to. It was just like there were all these there were tours based around the show that you could do a bike tour to visit
that's
all
cool.
the spots. Yeah, I mean it's like they really, really cared about the show, and like the city
I
took
bet that's
really
one of the
seriously.
that's one of the few things I think I've ever heard happening in New Mexico, just in general. I said
Yeah.
Arizona earlier. God, I'm just mixing up my desert states. That's awesome though. That's something to go see in Albuquerque now. People like who are massive fans of Breaking Bad are probably going to go there and just do the Breaking Bad tours.
I mean, they literally had to tell people to stop throwing pizzas on the roof.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the
that's
actual
right.
house, like that was a real thing. I mean, like, I can't believe that people go that far, or I guess I can believe that people go that far.
That's just a pizza. Doesn't it's not like it was costing them much.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
I'm glad you had fun. I was worried it was too serious.
I mean, I feel like it's not.
Well, it's
If
kind of
you-
good
if-
because it means it's more like informative.
Sure. I mean, I'm not very good when I'm trying to be funny.
Of course.
And I usually regret like what I've done if I don't let it happen naturally. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, you never
Yeah.
try to set up jokes. You have to bounce them off people, see where the chemistry goes. It's just
Yeah.
general rule of like improv and acting in general.
I've never liked it when you get a comedy actor like who gets interviewed and they just won't stop trying to be funny constantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess some people are naturally funny, but there are some people who they don't even answer questions. They just, look at me, like that's the answer that they give.
Yeah.
I had coffee and I was like, whoa, and everything. It's really dramatic and I don't know. I guess it sucks because that was kind of my opinion of Robin Williams until his death, when like everybody was talking about David Simon from The Wire talked about how Robin Williams like literally made his career.
Yeah.
And after I read that stuff and then started like reading more about Robin Williams and I wasn't a big fan of his stand-up, but like yeah, he was an incredible actor. Like
No, he was very underrated for his dramatic roles. I always felt that.
yeah,
He had
mean-
versatility to him, and I don't think people ever. This happens to a lot of comedy actors who try to do something serious, and people don't appreciate it. I still think Adam Sandler is bitter about Punch Drunk Love
oh
not
yeah.
doing very well, and he just sort of stopped caring.
That's an interesting one though, because I don't think it's like the circumstances are different. He's still basically just being an Adam Sandler character. Like
Mhm.
this is how I've always perceived it. It's just that like the situation was serious, and when you make him be Adam Sandler in a serious situation, it has a completely different flavor to it.
Yeah.
And it's like I love that movie. Like that is such a great film that like of all the Paul Thomas Anderson films,
Yeah.
you had a superstar in the lead, and I guess I don't know how financially successful it was, but yeah,
It did okay. I think it broke even eventually on DVD sale.
I thought he did a great job in that, but it's hard for me to assess whether he's being that different than what he usually is.
I mean, even if it was just presenting Adam Sandler into a context that's not a comedy, you don't have the wacky music playing or in the background or something.
Yeah.
It's still something that the director probably picked out specifically because he wanted that kind of character, but in a serious mood, if
Right.
that was the case.
Right.
And I still think that's something of note, and it's still Adam Sandler doing his job exactly how it was supposed to be done. And
Right.
people just don't respond well to it. Like, I remember Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind not doing very well because people were not used to Jim Carrey being too serious.
That's a weird one though, also because that like became what the new Donnie Darko essentially in terms of
Yeah.
the film everybody has got to see knowledge about films.
Hmm.
But I love Michel Gondry though. So
I love Michel Gondry. I loved his music videos.
yeah,
Everything
that
he
was
did that.
the box set of those. I had that in the Spike Jonze one.
I love early Spike Jonze videos because you can sum them up entirely with Spike Jonze films people running around Los Angeles with a 1970s cop filter.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best thing. It's so encompassing of all of his videos. It's just like, I want shots of someone running around Los Angeles. Get Spike Jonze for it.
I mean, I didn't even realize that the Praise You video like was him. Like when I first saw it, I was like, in 7th grade or whatever, and I was like, I didn't say this at the time, but I was like, wow, this is so cringe. And I didn't realize that was the joke, like he was, getting this dance troupe involved in doing this really mediocre dance routine.
Yeah.
And like, that was the joke. And then they performed at the MTV Music Awards. And then I realized, oh, that's the director. The main guy being a big goof.
Yeah. Well, Spike Jonze is an eccentric kind of guy.
Yeah.
He would do something like that. It's very much up his alley. At least it was. I don't know about it anymore. He did Her recently. It's like the most recent film he did, right?
Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but
I've never seen it still. I just have to see it. I became a big fan of Joaquin Phoenix when he pretended to be a rap, like quit acting and go into rapping, and people took him very seriously.
yeah. What was the documentary? Is it called like I'm Not Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And I just remember the big controversy of it. Like, people took him seriously, and it's just like it's clearly all a joke.
With the Casey Affleck
Yeah.
Yeah.
was at his side the whole time. Yeah, that was like Andy Kaufman level weirdness.
I think that's what Shia LaBeouf's been doing lately too. Very much the same situation. Shia LaBeouf is a stunt man, a public stunt kind of guy now. Does all these crazy things in public, and people are very confused or enamored by it.
Right. Well, okay. Here's a controversial one. How about Sam Hyde and $1 Million Extreme?
I think Sam Hyde is funny, and then he kind of takes the joke too far for me. It just goes on longer than I wanted to. It feels like an overextended Saturday Night Live skit sometimes. Like, I don't think he has he has the joke, and then he doesn't have the joke going for as long as it is sometimes. But sometimes his rants that he's put up on his videos, like, what is it, the one about, oh, you got a degree and you're good at computers, go get a degree, get to college, I'll get you a job at my thing, $500 to $1,000 salary. That
Right.
video is really funny because I relate to it very well, hearing old people talk to me about, oh, I'm good with computers.
Right. Well, I guess the thing, he's been an incredibly controversial figure, especially given the election and everything, and it's hard to figure out like what he actually is, and that's like a Andy Kaufman level discussion, because like I've had
Yes.
discussions with people about him, and because right now their show is like potentially up for renewal. I don't know if it's actually going to get renewed, or if
I
it's-
have a feeling it's not. I don't think it was received very well. Like, even his fans aren't receiving it very well.
I mean, it got really good viewing numbers, though. I mean, it had like
Yeah.
over 1 million people viewing every episode, but I can't necessarily figure him out. I mean, do you know Vic Berger?
No.
Okay, he does really
Oh, Vic
really good
Berger,
edits. I mean,
The
he's
Super Deluxe.
yeah. I mean, I kind of talk to him sometimes because I started talking to him like last year when his edits started getting popular, and like he got in a feud on Twitter with Sam Hyde, and I was trying to talk to him about Sam, and it's like there are a lot of people who just, Sam does things that are really really reprehensible sometimes, And it's really hard to tell. He was actually born on the exact same day as me, which is very
Wow.
like same year, same day, like, which is very weird. I saw because he posted his driver's license, and I was like,
That's
what?
right.
But anyway, so like they have stuff that is super well produced, and then they have stuff that is just like him doing this repulsive homophobic rant that's like meta level meta.
Yeah, he wants to piss people off because he wants to see them pissed. It's basically what it is. That he wants to see he's playing a caricature of who they think these kind of people are.
Right, and he wants to troll the people who think they're, unable to be trolled. And there's something really interesting about that. But like, yeah, like he's been so polarizing, and like there have been all these Adult Swim personalities have said like, we don't think the network should renew the show. We're thinking about leaving the network if they renew this show. And it's like, yeah, he has these terrible videos, and then they have this really interesting, subversive, they are alternative comedy. Like they are the modern.
They're very niche.
I think, yeah, and I think that they're kind of like the modern Tim and Eric in a regard.
Mm-hmm. I remember Tim and Eric reactions were very negative.
Yeah. And so now like Tim's come out against Sam also. And it's like all these people, I can't figure it out with Sam, because I can't, like, the fact that people will always say like, well, go look at this Reddit post. If you don't think he's a Nazi, go look at this Reddit post. And then you go look at the Reddit post, but then you think, well, he's probably sitting there knowing that people are saying, well, if you want to figure out Sam Hyde, look at this Reddit post. So he's going to make a Reddit post like that to perpetuate.
He's playing their heads, basically, just back and forth of, he knows people are going to see whatever he does, no matter what he does. So he's just going to play both sides at the same time.
Right. So then, like, I was trying to make a comparison to Andy Kaufman, because when Andy Kaufman was trolling the South by saying they don't understand hygiene when he was wrestling women, and like he pissed off a lot of people. He like demolished his career. Like it was on a downward spiral for the last few years of his life because he wrestled women and made fun of the South. Nobody knew he was joking. Like people who were accustomed to him were like, he's probably joking, but like he was making videos to purposely piss off the South. And like, I don't necessarily see how that's all that different than what Sam Hyde is doing.
Mm.
And people don't want to compare him to Andy Kaufman, but he's just relentless. Like he does not break character. He'll do something terrible, and then he just won't break character, because that's part of the routine, is to like wait when they expect him to break character and then not break character. And so it just is.
That's very much like you said, Tim and Eric, who, if you run into Tim or Eric on the street, they put on their Tim and Eric persona and they don't stop it. It never they never stop it in public if they're in public and they run into somebody, unless, they're just like, I'm not talking to you right now.
I think what makes people so uncomfortable is he delves into these like political extremes.
Right.
That is the number one reason why people find him very annoying or they don't like him, because he is very political with his humor. He does take that side.
I feel as if like that's the natural progression to where this sort of form of alt or anti-comedy was meant to go. Like you have to take it to a next level. Like you can't just do Tim and Eric again. You can't just do Andy Kaufman again.
Right.
Yeah, that's very surface level.
Right. And so that's why I guess I've tried to say, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what he really thinks, but I think that they have created some of the music that they use in their videos is just stunningly great. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know they just pick stuff, they have stuff sent to them, and they've made some of the greatest. I don't know. I'm just stunned by some of their music choices, and I don't know. I feel like it's really kind of, he's done things that are controversial, but it's like literally there's no depth to it. And it's like just literally somebody saying you're not supposed to do this. So he says, okay, we're going to do this then. And it's like, he doesn't have a deep meaning to it. He just like does the thing he's not supposed to do because he's been told so many times that you can't do that. And I don't know how to respond to that. There are things he does that I would never do in a million years, but part of me has to say, like, is it maybe a good thing that he is pushing this boundary? And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just it kind of sucks to me that they may get stomped out of Adult Swim by this. Like, the head of Adult Swim likes them, that
Yeah.
Mike Lazo, but like apparently no one else does. But I think that there's a lot of bullshit going around. I mean, Sam made a video addressing that they claimed that they had to digitally remove swastikas from the show.
No,
And I don't believe that for a second. Like, he said,
he's pumping it up.
yeah, and he addressed that. It was just like a source told me. It was that the BuzzFeed writer that's been after them. It was like a source told me that swastikas had to be digitally removed from the show before it aired. And, you know, Sam made a point. Like, we were scared as hell making the show. Like, we wanted to do our vision, but we didn't want to get canned, like, right away.
Yeah.
We're not going to hide swastikas in the show. It's not even a funny thing. You
No,
know,
that's just pointless.
So yeah, it's just like all these different dissenting voices about it. And I think that they're really interesting. And as somebody who, I guess, cares about comedy, it's hard for me to even recommend them to people, but some part of me, like, you know, wants to sometimes, but most of the time I'm just like trying to play it as safe as possible, because, like, I don't know what he truly is.
Yeah. What would it be if he came out truly as someone who was very fascist leaning and it wasn't really that humorous? I mean,
Sure.
what would people do? I don't know, because there's a lot of people who seem to be supporting of a lot of celebrities who are very into the pro-fascism scene that's happening right now.
Right.
And so who knows what would happen? I don't know if $1 Million Extreme would thrive more in that environment, or would it be like the tipping point of just like, oh, look what we've done. We've put someone like this into television.
Right.
And yeah, I think, like, yeah, I think it's important to know who $1 Million Extreme is, but I don't think you have to like them.
Well, I think the work can be separated from Sam, because it's just everything that anyone says about Sam, he makes it a reality. So it's just, he's just not going to let down with the trolling. So it's just, to me, you know, some people would say, well, you need to figure out who he is. You can't support him if he is truly these things. But it's like, the more that you dig, the more confused you get. Unless you just arbitrarily decide to draw a line and say he's bad. You know, he's a bad dude, etc. Like, I don't know. I just haven't been willing to do that, because I really like, there's an emotional quality to some of their work that is just, I think, really, really good in comedy. And I don't think that the bulk of their work is not super offensive. There are things that could be considered really offensive, but then there's other stuff that's just like a realistic satire of, you know, the American worker. And you know, putting in, you know, long works and going home to see your family, and your wife's cheating on you, and you're miserable. Like, who's going to contest that stuff? I don't know. And it's like, that's what most of it is that, and not the extreme examples. But
the extremes are what's going to get noticed more, because it's the internet. Like I said, first layer is the reactionary, and then it can turn into the entirety of the whole piece of what people see is just the reaction.
I mean, it's the same reason why I get depressed about the one negative comment and ignore the like 60 positive ones.
Oh yeah, I think it's some psychological thing about
that.
I mean, how was the reaction to all your Trump videos? Because I know some people were very like, "Oh, you're anti-Trump. Why are you upset? Why are you so mad? No election, whatever." I mean, how was that for you?
I didn't really get hit that hard by anything. I mean, I have my political leanings, and I think I made them clear, but I've never wanted to be I've never wanted to be really political, and I don't. I've never thought it to be that useful for me to, you know, master politics or keep up with all the facets of it, or understand, you know, all of the workings of Congress and bills and all that. Like, you know, I want to know about some of it, but like, I wasn't like betting on the election, and I wasn't making my predictions.
I don't think
Like,
anybody was. I think people were just hoping whoever they didn't like the most didn't win.
well, I mean, I had people in my Facebook friends list that were like, "Here are my predictions for the election," and everybody circle jerking over their numbers. And I mean, I think it's been an interesting season, and I don't even think that I was definitely harsh on Trump, but I don't think it was.
I mean, you were harsh. I think that your Hillary Clinton video was much harsher than
Oh
like
yeah.
your that original one you posted was much harsher than the one you made for Trump, the Trump song that you made originally.
I mean,
Before
the Trump one was the first one I ever made, but he was a very different. I mean, I made that over a year ago now.
Yeah, it was a very different time in the candidacy. It was before the primaries and everything, and
I mean, it seemed to be motivated because I had just voted for Bernie in the primaries or whatever. It was about to happen, when I made the Hillary Clinton song. But I still stand behind everything I said in the Hillary Clinton song. I wasn't. I
that's right.
voted
Your
for Hillary-
primaries are before mine. I'm sorry. I'm in California. I have the last primary, so I didn't get to vote for Bernie until like June. Ugh.
Yeah, that's really late.
It's so late. It's useless.
But I guess it was just like, I voted for Hillary, but I still believe all the things I said in the song.
Yeah. No, I mean
I'm not
that's
willing
general.
to back down.
That's a lot of what people said. It's like I don't like Hillary, but it was a lesser of two evils election is like a good general consensus of what a lot of people thought of the election. There's a lot of people who are very pro Trump or very pro Clinton. I don't see why you would choose to be so on the side of one or the other.
Right.
There's a lot of flaws that I can see in both. So yeah,
I mean, my mixer friend in New York City, like, he went to high school with a guy who worked for the Trump campaign. He was like a liberal who converted to Trump. And he literally just thinks that he's just rolling the dice, that he thinks that maybe we're going to get a better outcome out of Trump than we would Hillary. Like, that was his whole thing. Like, he believes in climate change. He believes in universal health care and all this stuff. And I think that there are probably other people like him, plenty of them. And I don't know, I guess it was kind of interesting to hear, that he wasn't specifically a Bernie bro. I mean, like, he actually helped, he volunteered for the Trump campaign. Like, he gave a lot of energy to that organization. And he just seems to think that Trump's kids are going to keep him in check. And, that he's just going to try to be popular, which means that if there's a lot of unpopular policies that he might go back on them, right? I don't know. I'm not. I'm
very confused as to what
neutral.
Trump will do personally, because he says a lot and then he goes back on them, and he does that a lot. And there's a lot of like, the Hamilton thing? Someone was just talking about this last night, where it's like, it doesn't seem like he talks to Mike Pence at all, because Mike Pence wasn't that upset about the Hamilton thing, but Trump went on Twitter going on about it, and it's like, what is the communication here?
Right.
You two should be on the same page, but clearly you're not.
Right.
So I'm just confused as to what's going to happen, because it's so unpredictable. This is really unpredictable.
I just feel overall that Trump will ultimately be like a right centralist. Nothing really that's,
Oh, he's leaning. It's already happening with those cabinet choices.
Nothing much in terms. It's probably going to be ineffective. I just like kind of mid road, sort of thing. Like, I don't think it'll be as bad as certain people project it to be. I don't think it'll be as good. Definitely won't be as good as other people project it to be. But,
sure.
Overall, it's just like perhaps business as usual, maybe a little worse, but it won't be anything that can't be undone.
Yeah,
ultimately.
people forget the president doesn't control everything.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's something that if they want change, everyone needs to really go for the small government, work your way up. Change starts at the bottom, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, it's been a very, with obviously, social media presence, and it's just been a weird time. And I think I did my part in terms of like actually making videos and content, regarding the election.
Oh yeah, I loved the Ted Cruz song. That's one I go back to the most.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a funny one. That was a real fun one. But that was same bullshit as my wrestle song. Somebody's like, you should do a song about presidential candidates. And I was like, all right, well, if people are if there's only a specific fan base for, show X, and there's only a specific fan base for wrestler Y, there's probably going to be a bigger fan base for, president candidate, whatever letter. We'll say
Yeah.
Z now. So I figured it would be the widest spread thing, and I'm still disappointed that like the Hillary video didn't explode. Like, even if it would have exploded on right-wing sites,
Yeah,
I'm surprised that didn't happen.
Look, I've been saying this. I subscribed sometime in March this year when you had probably 10K subscribers at the time. You were still Dotflist at that time too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there thinking, like, how come this? I saw like, oh, you'd been mentioned on Fantano's thing, and he got you the theme song for It Came from Bandcamp, and I remember sitting there thinking, why is this not more popular? Why is all these things? I think the most popular video on your channel right now is the Smash Mouth inverted cover.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking that's the one video that gets popular, not all these other ones. Are people not looking at the channel and seeing what else you have? It's a weird thing to me that you were so unseen at this point. Even now, it's still like we sat there and everyone was very, very happy to see that you blew up after the Philip DeFranco thing, because I think we talked to you just before that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what the hell that was going to be, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why things work and why things don't work. I mean, I did another thing with Jack's Films. I don't know when he's going to release it. I've been waiting and waiting, but like, it was like August. He asked me if I would write micro songs. He said, I want to collaborate on something. And then he did a thing where he asked people to leave comments if they wanted a micro song written about them. And so like 2 months ago now, or like a month and a half ago, he asked me, will you do some of these micro songs? I'll pay you for them. I was like, okay, great. Like, this is going to be great promo. Well, that he was supposed to release it. I got them done in like one day. And then he's like, oh, it'll be October at the earliest. And then I was like, okay. And then I waited, and he's like, oh, it'll be the end of October. And then he said, oh, it'll be the end of November at the earliest. And I'm just waiting and waiting. And then the Philip DeFranco thing happened during that. But I don't know. It gets kind of when you're making stuff that you care about, and like, that a plug is coming, it like makes you want to hold off.
Yeah.
And it's not the right thing to do, because, momentum is momentum, but it's like, oh, if I can hold off and suddenly have 20,000 more people watching this video, it kind of sucks. And it's great, and it sucks that just more people, it perpetuates itself.
Mm-hmm.
Just more people then post it to Reddit. More people recognize the name. More people do this and that. And that's just been a frustrating patience element of it. But like, in terms of, the Patreon is up to like $5.50 a month, and that's amazing to me, because I know channels that have 2 to 3 times as many subscribers as I do that have like 200 a month on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that there's an expectation that they're making more from ad revenue, but like, if that amount of money was based on ad revenue, I'd have to have like 2 to 3 times more subscribers than I have right now. So
Yeah.
it's essentially like, in terms of what I'm worth, I'm at this inflated subscriber count, or I guess my real subscriber count in terms of like dollars value is higher than what the subscriber count is, but then the actual subscriber count is lower.
But that also can draw back to like the argument of actual, like, real active subscribers, like we were talking about earlier. With some channels have like millions and millions of subscribers, but how much actually like are active or watch their content or engage with said content creator?
Right. So I mean, the Patreon thing, I didn't even want to do it, but it's definitely like, I would have gone broke multiple times in the past year without it.
I don't think there's any shame in asking.
I mean, you shouldn't tell people what they can do. You should give them the option if they want to take it,
Yeah,
you should let them. And some part of me wants to say like what I do isn't worth it. I shouldn't be charging for this. I shouldn't be doing this, but it's not my choice to make. You know, I just need to make the thing and put it out there. And
exactly. And be like, hey, here's the option if you want. But yeah, just putting it out there, like if people want to.
Yeah, I like that about Patreon. It's not really like you have to do it. It's just something nice that you can do. And there's people who I think people get really offended at the thought that whatever they watch on YouTube will somehow unintentionally support something they don't necessarily like. Like they just clicked on a video casually and they don't necessarily want to support that person.
right.
See, I'm looking at your Patreon right now, and I'm wondering because you have the $60 or more per month, and you have indicated on it, I'll write a song for you as long as you've been a patron for 3 months. So those two patrons, have they asked for their song yet?
One just contacted me. I mean, I still do commissioned works. Like I get people contacting me all the time who are like, "Oh, I wish you had that another level open on there." And it's like that was just like a promo price thing, you know. I was told by that podcast Laser Time who wrote about me, who they get like 10,000 a month on Patreon.
Wow.
I mean, it's to support like 5 people.
Guys, we need to open up a Patreon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
like,
I'm not
have
kidding.
you also noticed Chapo Trap House? They've been doing it for like 6 months. They get like $20,000 a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
They're like 3 guys.
right. So I mean, it can be either just getting by. I mean, these guys live in Laser Time. They live in San Francisco, but they just told me put an extreme tier up there, just in
Someone
case
will do
somebody-
it.
Because someone has money and they'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there have been 2 people, and I've just said, you know, if you ever decide what you want, just let me know and I'll make it. But I mean, I do commission stuff all the time. That was just like a little thing that I threw up there, and I mean, it's most of the 2 people doing it obviously don't care that much, you know, about getting a benefit. I don't think I've done the best job at like keeping Patreon things exclusive, but it's also like I want to make the best content possible. And a lot of people who do a Patreon, they just overpromise and they just burn themselves out. And I don't want to be in that situation, you know. I just want to make the best content
Yeah.
possible, and
It's just keep
you
it
know, there are
real.
people who end up having to do 3 to 5 hours of hangouts, Google Hangouts every week, you know, because they've promised all these different groups that they'll hang out with them every week. And it's like I think ultimately what people want is they want the content. You know, they
Yeah.
do, that would be nice sometimes, but like if it's affecting your workflow. I mean, I was warned about these. They were called champagne problems.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, oh no, now I have a whole bunch of stakeholders who really give a fuck about me, and now I've really got to go above and beyond to keep them. And I guess I've just, you know, it's like I have on one of the tiers that, oh, you'll get the MP3s for free. Well, when I started charging on Bandcamp, as soon as I did that, I set everything on Bandcamp to paid to some value, and everything stopped selling. Like everything. Nobody's buying anything anymore when they had solid price tags on them. But then when it's pay what you want, I get purchases all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like,
people like to pay like their
Yeah.
$1 to $2
I-
maybe, or like $3, and you
I
get
think
them.
people like to feel good about themselves in that kind of sense. They're like, oh, don't tell me what to pay for it. But
Right.
if they're feeling like charitable about it, if they feel like they're doing a good thing, they're like, oh, I could get it for free. But if I paid money, that would make me a good person and I could support them. I think there's a little bit of that kind
Right.
of internal payoff, if you know what I mean. Like,
I mean, the other counter argument is that people have said that when you put a price on that's pay what you want, including 0, that you're forcing them to tell you what it's worth to them, including 0.
yeah.
But I've not experienced that, because it's like, yeah, I feel bad that like on Patreon I'm still giving away the tracks for free on Bandcamp. So it's like people who are supporting me, they're not necessarily getting a benefit like in terms of the track for free. But I can't shut down that entire audience. You know, I can't shut down that entire income stream. You
Mm.
know, if people care about what I'm doing, then I think that the majority of them are okay with me just trying to get the songs out to as many people as possible. Like it doesn't. It just. I care about people hearing some of these songs, and it's like I don't want nobody to buy them just so that I can restrict them to Patreon freebies.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a weird experience for me. I guess I've vacillated, regarding like, should I do this? Should I do that? What should I do with this? But again, it's like I said that like people at $15 and up can like vote on what I do. And then like I would make a post and say, what do you think I should do? And like nobody responds to it. It's like nobody would be around then.
Yeah.
And I'd make an exclusive post for them, because I don't know if you've ever used it, if any of you have used it, but when you make a post, you choose what tiers of people can see it. So you can say $1 and up, you can say $2 and up, $5 and up, etc. And then they're the only ones who can see that post, and the rest of the people say for Patreon or for patrons $5 and up, or whatever. But yeah, it's like if I make these levels and people want to donate at them, but they don't necessarily want to do the engaging part, I don't think I should worry about that. I mean, I don't think that I should lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
I should just let it be there. I mean, it's been a learning experience.
It is. It's very neat to have this insight of somebody who's going through this stuff because it's so
Absolutely.
relatively new.
It's been great. I tried to tell Frank JFC to start a Patreon because he's...
Yeah, I reckon he'd be pretty successful on it. He's got some like loyal following.
He's got people. I don't know if it's the same kind of loyal. I don't know. I don't feel like his fans are the same.
They love the shit out of him, though. I just think that...
They do.
At the very least, he gets... I mean, we're talking like 190,000 subscribers, so he gets pretty good ad revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he knows like exactly what he needs to make, and then he gets like 4,000 plays a day on Spotify or something, I think is what he was estimating to me.
Oh, wow.
Which is like a lot of plays. And I mean, I'm making like 40 or 50 bucks a month on there for like, maybe more than that now, for like 400 or 500 plays a day. Like that's what I'm getting on there. It's like when there's no label taking a cut, like that's another income stream. So I tried to encourage him to make a Patreon because he still lives with his parents.
Yeah, I know
like,
that he does.
Yeah, and it's like he wants to get his own place, but he just hasn't. Yeah. He's never tried the Patreon thing, and now he's doing like a mixtape thing. But
he has ups and downs in emotion. Apparently, is what it seems like.
He's
posting on his Twitter about that recently. I think I saw. Yeah. So that might affect his motivation and willingness to do everything.
He hasn't released a video in a long time. Like
4 weeks now, it says.
A traditional. But before that, even like a traditional Frank JFC video has not happened in a long time. I mean,
like a how-to.
Yeah.
No, it hasn't been a how-to since his other than cooking videos, I think.
Yeah.
Which I love his cooking videos. I think those are fun. Yeah. I like cooking stuff. But
I mean, he's a meme king. I mean, he knows he's great at memes. I mean,
yeah.
So I think that he could easily get to my level on Patreon, like probably in a week or two. Like, I don't know what.
I think he could surpass most anyone on Patreon. He has just that weird fan base for it. They'll give him money for this.
Right.
Especially if it involves him cooking more complicated foods, to give him more money for food.
It's his girlfriend's kitchen.
Oh, is that his girlfriend's kitchen?
The nice kitchen, yeah.
I've always wondered what that is because it's such a nice kitchen that I've seen his bedroom and I'm just like, that looks like a normal bedroom for like East LA. I know where that is.
Right.
And his girlfriend lives in the hills.
He doesn't have what do I want to say here? He doesn't have AC at his parents' house, and I asked him about that, and he's like, yeah, it's my girlfriend's kitchen, and I really want to move out and get my own place, and he quit smoking weed recently and something, and he was like,
that's good.
Yeah, he was getting really depressed all the time, and
that seems to happen to a lot of people we know. We have a couple people in the radio who are dealing with that, and it's like, yeah, you quit smoking weed, that helps your mood a lot. You feel a lot more motivated.
Yeah, but like after a while.
Yeah, it stays in your body though. That's the thing. Not to do the dare drug class here.
I mean, I'm 31 now, and I feel like booze just started hitting me in a way that I don't like. Like I'm
Mm.
not good at drinking anymore. Like as soon as I
Mhm.
got like 30, 31, it's like a hangover is just disastrous to me. And if I can have a beer or two and smoke some weed and have the same amount of like joyous feeling without spiraling. I mean, that's what I was gonna say. I guess with music, like when I listen, it's usually when I'm high because it like resets your ears,
Yeah.
and that's I will approach my own mixes with that, but like yeah, I mean, as somebody who I didn't even start drinking till I was 25, so and then like the only drugs I've ever tried have been in the past few years, and like that those states are when I really appreciate music now in a way that I never did before. But yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm sober, I don't necessarily I'm not chasing music like I used to. But when I'm high, I can just like sit there and just like appreciate the shit out of it.
Yeah, and I hear that with some people. Some people don't have the same thing. I think some people listen to it to add some sort of effect to it, or it doesn't always work for everybody the same way, and it's a very individual case. I think people forget that that's how basically everything works, is individual cases of things. Like marijuana isn't always the best thing for everybody. Some
Right.
people can't handle it,
Right.
and I don't know. It's a
Guess
quick
also,
wave
like,
of legalization that's
sometimes
happening right now. So it's gonna
I
be
mean,
a little binge, and people are gonna start feeling where they live, where they're at comfortably with how they want to live with it.
I guess it's like the easiest comparison for me is that you know booze, which is legal.
Yeah.
Um, I if I drink too much, I vomit and pass out and wake up and my skeleton hurts for like 2 days, like my bones ache,
Oh
and
God.
I don't feel like doing anything. Like I like lose the next day after I do it. But it's like
yeah.
the worst drug experience of my life was eating a like professionally made weed brownie that was not gauged right. Like it was not measured out correctly. It was
It was
like
more.
well, it was like my roommate at the time he wanted to sell them because he had some it was like some leftover leaves or something from a harvest of weed that weren't really smokable, but they were bakeable. And so anyway, he was going to try to sell the brownies like like the whole brownie as a serving, but then
Oh
he's like,
no.
"Oh, maybe we'll do a half brownie." And then so I ate a half brownie, and like my girlfriend took like a bite of one, and this other guy who was with us ate an entire brownie, and it was just like I ended up like vomiting 3 times,
Ooh.
and I ended up like frozen on the couch, like staring at a cup of water for like 2 hours. It was like I was watching a funny show and it ended and I couldn't move. So I was just like
Oh
staring at,
no.
the Adult Swim logo or something, of Tim and Eric, just like staring at this cup and wishing I was drinking it. And then that was until I started vomiting that then I like got
Oh.
up. I vomited and then I got like 10 times higher than I was like after I vomited. Like I just
What?
kept getting higher and higher and higher. And it's like I didn't figure it out until later that like I should have just tried to go to sleep. It was like 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, and like I go downstairs and like everybody else who ate it like is all like sitting down there staring at each other, like they're trying to play a board game and like moving in slow motion, or like staring out the window, and like nobody was really talking and it was just like eerily silent. And yeah, and it was awful, and I just could not. It was just terrible. I just kept getting higher. It's like you get high and you're like, oh, this is pretty good, and then you get higher and you're like, wow, this is nice, and then you're like higher and you're like, okay, I think the last level of high
Uh,
was pretty good, but not this
yeah.
one. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
now I'm higher than that, and now I'm higher than that, and then it just kept going and going. But then the next morning, I was fucking fine, 100% fine.
Yeah.
Just got up and went about my business. And it's like, this is the worst experience of my life. Like, that was just a fucking nightmare. Like, I wasn't actually suicidal, but I was sitting there thinking, like, if I died right now, it would be better than this. Like, what I'm
Yeah.
experiencing.
I
then-
felt that, and I actually was watching Adult Swim, and it was Black Dynamite. They were airing it at like 4 a.m. on repeat, and it was awful. The worst thing I've ever felt.
Yeah.
I got tired of watching the movie, but I couldn't find the remote, and I was just stuck to the couch, and I couldn't get up to find it. I was at someone else's house too, so I was like, they were asleep. I didn't want to wake them up, so I'm just in this really awkward position of me trying to find this remote to change the channel, and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't do anything, and I watched Black Dynamite like 3 times, and I can't watch the movie ever again.
Yeah.
I've never understood why everyone always talks about how weed is just like so relaxing, because every single time I've done it, it's just been like, oh my god, it's like terrified of everything.
That's definitely, I mean, like the paranoia and stuff, that definitely affects people way differently because, I mean, some people just don't give a shit at all, and some people take a hit of it and are like, hey, can you lower the blinds, man? I don't know about this. Like,
I don't
well,
know about this.
I mean, it's basically like legal in Ann Arbor. It's like if you're busted with it here, as long as you're not on campus, it's like a $10 fine or something.
Wait,
Oh,
what?
so it's like
Is
decriminalized.
this a statewide thing for us?
Just in Ann Arbor. Well, just in Ann
The
Arbor.
city of Ann
Oh,
Arbor. Just the
okay.
city
Yeah.
of Ann Arbor. That sucks.
Yeah, and I'm saying that if you're on state property, then it's state law. But Ann Arbor
Oh.
has it like really, really quasi legalized. I mean, in terms of punishment. But like, yeah, I mean, of all the things to be paranoid about, I mean that's really low on the list. But I've got a friend who, whenever he's high, is like that. You know, immediately draws the blinds or like gets on the floor so that you can't see him above the couch. You know, like.
It doesn't
I
sound
don't like
fun.
that. I don't like the darkness when I've ever smoked weed. People like turn down all the blinds and it's just too dark and it's just it's too depressing. Can't do it. It affects
I mean,
my
the
mood
question is,
much.
anybody who doesn't like weed though, have you actually tried like straight up hallucinogens?
No, I haven't.
I had a dissociative that was even worse. That
Okay.
was even more
God.
horrifying.
That's a whole other deal.
Because the thing for me, like with weed, is like when you get way too high, it's hard to like look at it and be like, oh, ancient people have done this for so long, because you just ingested way too fucking much of something. You're just
Yes.
stupid. Like,
I think
Yeah.
1 million of those ancient people probably did this.
so it's like when you're looking at like LSD or shrooms or something that like have actual clinical applications. Like
Yeah.
if we hadn't immediately made them illegal, like they'd probably be used to treat mental illness now.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah,
like
we'd have,
if you're in
we'd have psilocybin capsules or something.
Yeah, I'm saying that like if you're in the middle of a trip like that, you know, it is like it's like a vacation in some sense. It has highs, it has lows. It's like, you know, going to a foreign country where you're kind of uncomfortable, but you're also having a really great time sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way for me to compare it. That it's been like this remarkable experience. So if you're in the middle of it, you can stop and you can be like, wait a minute, this is like something that's teaching me about myself, or I'm unraveling.
Yeah.
And like that's a good thing, but like if you're so fucking stoned that like you want to vomit, like you're just, there's no way to look at this and be like, oh, I just need to seek the depth of this substance. You know,
No.
there's nothing there. There's no wisdom.
I
You're
really
just
relate
high.
to that. I really relate to that. It does feel like I'm abusing the excess of this drug that was chemically and genetically altered to be stronger and stronger for now.
Right.
Well, that's something
I'm
that I find really
ingesting it.
interesting. Is this just like, yeah, the culture of like getting the most fucked you can,
Yeah.
like getting
That happens a
stoned
lot
out of
with
your mind.
stoners. Stoners really love that. They love to be like constantly high, or
I-
it's
Dude, I had some friends who they like organized a night where they were like seeing who would pass out last.
the thing
So
is, I
just
doubt
like-
any of them could
yeah.
tell because they couldn't stand up.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun.
No, it doesn't really.
But that's
No.
kind of, you know, for a lot of people, that's booze also, is just go until you're.
Yeah, yeah.
Done.
Uh,
That's
uh,
college right there.
Yeah.
That's awful. That sounds terrible.
That's exactly what you do in college. Friday or Saturday night, just drink until you die. And then you do it again next week.
Or I mean, when you're that age, you can.
Do it again the
Right.
next, 2
Yeah,
days
just do
later.
it again the next
Yeah.
day.
I know some people who like
I think a lot of your
what a
friends,
skill being able
personally-
to be that resilient and not.
well, a lot of your friends have abused their livers enough to where their body doesn't process all that alcohol they take in. It doesn't put it. It already processes it perfectly fine. It's used to it.
I mean, that's the other dangerous component is like the people who can process it that well. Like if you want to become an alcoholic, like if you have that predisposition,
Yeah, exactly.
like where you don't really suffer from hangovers and stuff, like there's some people like that who could just go into oblivion and then just get up the next day and go to work and not have it be crippling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thankful that like I'm not gonna say I was straight edge, but like I was borderline straight edge. I mean, it was minus the militant component. It wasn't like I was sitting around like hating people who use drugs, but like not having a drink until like 25, forced me to skip the whole phase of not having any consequences. I mean,
Yeah.
you're already an adult then, and then the thing is that like once I tried stuff like that was the benign stuff, which I'll call weed and beer, in moderate quantities, then I was like, oh, I had this assumption that my friends who were stoned in high school were legitimately on another planet. I was like, I need to figure out what it's like to be on another planet. So then I was like, trying to try LSD and shrooms and stuff. And then I haven't done LSD in a while, but it's a really remarkable thing that I don't even know if I can recommend it to people, but it's been.
I plan on doing it sometime in my life. It's just I have anxieties and stuff. I just don't. I'm not gonna go into it right away. I want to be in the right
Yeah, well,
mental
as long as
spot.
you have like a friend around, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that many people around. All my friends moved away, unfortunately.
I was always the designated like watcher of everybody.
The
Sitter.
trip sitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or someone would like do shrooms. I've wanted to try psychedelics. Weed never really interested me. I only tried it the first time this past summer when I was at the Way Home Festival. Like I hit a joint like it was like 1967.
Nice.
And then, but yeah, psychedelics. There's a part of me that wants to try it because this kind of mind-altering chemical that really makes you see different things and alters your outlook on life sometimes. But there's also a part of me that says it's probably not a good idea since I have epilepsy, so I'm not sure how that would mess with my brain chemistry.
Yeah,
I mean, I would just try to read trip reports to see if anyone
with epileptics, see how
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And your epilepsy is very mild, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't had a seizure in 16 years, so.
Yeah.
I just the most remarkable thing for me was like you think so like everybody's seen things that you say like, oh, they were on drugs when they made this, or this is clearly for people on drugs. But it's like when you watch something like that when you're on drugs, it's like your brain is like doing gymnastics. Like
Mhm.
it is so otherworldly. I mean, there's this Adult Swim show called Off the Air.
Yes, I love those. Those are
Oh my
compilations of all those
God.
videos.
Oh my fucking God, that was just I can't even explain. Like it was just watching that and being like, I am in the intended state for this. And I mean, it was just it was just wild. I mean, it was. And the other thing is like what I like to do is the last time I did it was like I would try to you either type on a keyboard or you swipe on a phone or text or whatever, or like do math problems, and it's like you can your brain feels like it's physical, that like you can feel the gears turning in it as you try to solve problems.
Yeah.
And like you're swiping and you're doing something
I
automatically on your
remember that
phone and you're
feeling.
typing, but you can feel like every impulse causing that movement, and that to me is very, very stunningly weird. But yeah, also just the introspective, again, I don't recommend it to anyone unless they're willing to like research what it's like, because it's not all great. But at the end of the day, you get done and you're like, wow, I'm happy that I did that, and I'm happy that it's over. like at the same time. Like you're happy to return to your normal life, and it can't be addictive, you know? It's just too heavy.
Yeah.
You can't do that and then be like, oh man, tomorrow I'm gonna completely rip myself apart and reassemble myself, man. It's gonna be awesome. Like
We know
that's like
someone in the radio who's very much like that. They take a lot of things that are not even like acid. They take weird things that cause them
Yeah.
to see nightmare
Yeah,
things
that's
because
right.
they want to see those. I don't know the mentality in that personally,
Cassius?
but they're quite. No, Cassius is just schizophrenic. No, we're talking about Bobby Boulders. He takes like the most extreme stuff sometimes and is just super into it. He loves it. He loves to see these spiders crawling out of his mouth in the mirror.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just he's probably got, you know, the right brain chemistry that he just probably doesn't worry about things that much. I just
It's very calm.
it really is the same thing, you know. Person to person is going to have a totally different experience, and it's just like you have to start doubling the dosage to even get similar responses, and then eventually you're not getting anything. I mean, it just you need like a week before you can have a substantial trip again, so it's never going to be like the same intensity, but you can definitely, yeah, there's so many different like random chemical variations that aren't actually LSD. I mean, like that's the
Yeah, the research chemicals, and that's what actually like kills people.
yeah, the N-bohm, or that's one of the big ones or something. Some of them have really similar responses to the real deal, but like LSD is really bizarre in that there's like these, you know, like the Grateful Dead communities and stuff, and they've got the family, and the family knows the last remaining Albert Hoffman relative who built a silo, who has all the remaining hits of legit LSD, and they distribute them once every 10 years, and like I don't know how much this is like all folklore, and I don't know what is actually real anymore.
Deadheads are very strange. I always think of that. They're very strange to me. But they are a very rabid and like very tight community. It's the similar thing to Burning Man, but I've been seeing Burning Man's been falling apart lately in terms of who the people are going to Burning Man now and the types of things happening there. It's a lot of sketchier things and more dangerous things happening.
Also a bit more corporate, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
It is a lot more corporate, I think the worst part is the community changed. Like corporate sponsors were always there; they existed, but
yeah, but I think it's the people who are coming in with like RVs and air conditioning. I mean, like the violent stuff, I think has been just in response to people coming there and like literally building hotels.
Yeah.
And like completely defeating the purpose of it. But again, I mean, it's supposed to be about, you know, all forms of acceptance. It's just, yeah, I can see why it would be annoying that somebody essentially builds a, you know, luxury hotel in the middle of the desert and flies in a helicopter to use it.
Yeah, they have a lot of things like where it's a lot less art focused now. I have my friend's uncle who lives in San Jose goes like every year, and he just goes because he's a long time. Like he went in the 70s or the 80s or whatever, and he just goes every year. He has the money to do it somehow, but he's been saying it's not the same. Just a totally different crowd of people. There's a lot of weird things going on, especially with all the niche Tumblr communities who make like, oh, anyone who's in this like into this thing, you can come to Burning Man, and they have a weird tent for them for their possible group sex thing, but very specific type of group sex, and it's like that's a thing there. Sometimes people don't wear the condoms that they have at the bowl right at the front that they give you. It's a bowl full of condoms that you just take and you go in the room and then you have just a massive orgy in the orgy pit.
Yeah, I remember reading about that there was an orgy tent.
Yep, there is.
Many of them. I mean, a friend of mine went there, like he went with a bunch of Detroit burners, and they did like 30 hours of labor to build their camp.
Yeah.
And drove an RV in there, and it was like very community oriented, and yeah, like they just really gave a shit about what they were doing. And like I can understand how that's so different than a perfect environment and then all of this.
There's so much effort done in some of those people's setups. They bring in these giant, like they make giant cars that are made out of like recycled newspapers and things like that. Then there's some guy who apparently goes around almost every year who dresses up as Jesus and carries like a 2-scale wooden cross around. And it's sort of, I don't know if it's a social experiment in his head to do it, because sometimes people go and help him and he will let you take the cross from him and things like that.
Wow.
And you can drag it behind him as he walks in front of you. And it seems very philosophically, it's a very fun idea to do that. to go as Jesus and let someone take the weight off your back.
Yeah.
I love that concept.
That's like the true spirit of Burning Man. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's hard to say. When you start to say this is not the true spirit of Burning Man, you are a problem. That attitude in itself is a problem.
It's ever changing, of course.
But it's hard to say. It's hard to just stop and say, you know, if you want to come in here, like, who's to say it's not going to completely change to the point that like all of the space is occupied
Mm-hmm.
by millionaires and billionaires who just want to occupy the entire desert space. Like that could happen, and hypothetically, you know, they should have a problem with it, and I can see them, you know, like setting the camps on fire and stuff, and people losing their shit over it. But it's just it's weird because it's, you know, it's about just straight up unwavering tolerance, but also trying to maintain some kind of spirit or some kind of community.
I think
spirit.
their spirit they want to keep up is that it's a temporary structure place, and that I think that's the first thing they do. No matter what, I think that's the base rule is everything has to be temporary. You can't make it so that you can't pull it out in an hour. If you can't take it all down and bring it home with you, you don't bring it.
Right.
That's the first rule. And I think the other one is that it's expression and artisticness. Like if you it's somewhere you go to express yourself. Don't go there if you're going to be someone who doesn't participate. And that's the other rule. Like that's the two rules I know they go by, and that's kind of what they tell people. Don't come if you aren't going to participate. If you're just going to sit there and just stare at people. It's not a people watching event. This is a community that exists for like a week out of the year.
Right.
And you're supposed to have fun.
I mean, I'd like to go there eventually, but
it's expensive.
It's expensive, and I mean, if I'd go there with a camp, I don't know that I have, you know, the guts to just show up there randomly with no other group.
Oh, you got to go with the Hot Dad band. That's one of the tour stops.
Yeah.
Go with like Anthony and Frank and.
Yeah.
Anthony Pantano doesn't. He's straight edge. He's total straight edge.
Yeah.
He won't do anything.
Yeah, but you can still go there as a straight edge person.
Oh, you absolutely can. There's some people there who are not on drugs. They're just very eccentric. I think I appreciate those people more. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like those people who are just that, their brain just is wired that way to think in some of the ways they do. It's really interesting to me.
Like
I was like,
Wayne
those people.
Coyne pre-Embryo.
Wayne Coyne pre-drugs in The Flaming Lips is very much the same like that. But then again, he also bounced a lot of ideas off Stephen Draws, who was on heroin.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting.
There was a little
moral of the
space
story.
He wasn't on heroin.
Yeah, there's a lot of space he was on heroin, which is like the entirety of like the Soft Bulletin afterward.
I'm not. I mean, the Soft Bulletin I love, but I haven't been able to get into their like the crazier they get.
Yeah. Some people feel that way. I liked the most recent album, The Terror. I liked that a lot. I thought it was really cool sounding.
I mean, Alex from my channel, you know, formerly from my channel. I mean, we have there's the home improvement videos on there. I don't know if you've ever seen those that we did. It was the same concept. It's I've never really watched Home Improvement. That wasn't a show I was really that into, and you know, I wrote a parody of it. Which again, you know, there's not really much going on that has anything to do with the show. And then yeah, I mean, he's really into the newer records of the Flaming Lips, and I've always like argued with him that like I feel like they've already hit their prime, and but I don't know why. There's no incentive to stop. I mean, Wayne Coyne gave up most of his life to try to get there, and now he can just do whatever he wants, so he's obviously going to do it.
Yeah, I think people really underestimate the fact that he knows he's a rock star and he's going to just do whatever he wants, whether he tells you not. And he everything. When I met him, he's very much like a punk rock kind of guy. Where it's like, I don't give a fuck what you tell me to do. I'm going to do what I want. And he has the power to do that now. And so that's what he's doing, and people are upset about it, and he doesn't give a shit. He's having fun.
But I mean, they still have massive audiences everywhere. I mean,
oh, of course, they're one of the best. The people go see them whether or not they like the new records. They go see them anyway because they love the live show.
Yeah,
they're a very good band to see live. I've never seen them live, but I should. I really want to.
I've seen them live twice, both free at shows. Actually.
Wow.
Yeah, there's the makeup show for the Radiohead collapsed stage show, wasn't it?
Yeah, I a few years ago, you may have heard about this. I went to go see Radiohead, but when I got there, the stage collapsed. So I basically ran downtown to Toronto, Yonge and Dundas Square, to go see the Flaming Lips live. Me and about 20,000 other people.
Wow.
Pretty intense.
Yeah, the stage collapsed, killing one guy, and I think that the stage company like tried to. I think Radiohead tried to get, or someone tried to sue them,
Yeah.
or someone tried to get sued for something, and I think the lawsuit didn't go through because it was just like, I don't know, it was on whoever put the stage together. The liability was on them.
Oh
I don't
shit!
know.
It killed their drum tech.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Flaming Lips were just playing at a different.
Yep. It was during North by Northeast.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, like, I was actually conflicted when I found out that they were playing on the same day. I was like, oh shit, but like I had already bought the Radiohead tickets like the moment they came out. Like I was sitting there on Ticketmaster.com like refreshing, like waiting to buy those tickets. So when the show got canceled, it was just like, oh shit, I guess I get to go see this. And cool thing was is they actually played a cover of
Knives Out.
Yeah, Knives Out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I forgot about this. I mean, I'm sure I heard about it when it happened, but
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal because it's one of the few like Radiohead shows that they were playing live again. Like it was like, oh, look at them, they're playing live. Maybe they have a new album, and then of course they didn't have one ready at that time.
I think it was just after.
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. It was for the King of Limbs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they haven't played Toronto since.
They'll
They
play
played-
again.
They played Oshiega, but they still haven't played Toronto. God damn.
yeah, I'm having a good time. My cat's doing well. I'm feeling
Yeah.
good.
That's
really
great.
Good, that is good.
to hear.
I mean, I had I've been giving him his IV treatments. I don't know if anyone else has done this.
I know this. I haven't done this personally, but I know what this is.
Yeah, and so my girlfriend does her research in Brazil. She's going to be gone for 2 months this winter.
Oh no.
And I mean, we just live together. I mean, we live alone in this house, and so I was just getting all stressed out about it. Like, I mean, I'm here all the time with this cat. Like, that's why it was
Yeah.
such a big deal when he got all sick. But I was just nervous that I wasn't going to be able to do it by myself because we were always having to hold him as a group. And it was like, today was the 4th day I've successfully done it.
Nice.
And on the first and second times I wasted an extra needle. And then day 3 I wasted 6 needles.
Oh.
and then today I did 1. So
I mean, got to do it to get better. I think, as much as I think this is one of the situations where everyone experiences, like they don't think they can do it, and eventually you have to do it anyway. You know, in your mind and your body, you have to get it done, no matter what you think, and then you do it, and it probably isn't as bad as you think it was.
right. I mean, he's his life is being elongated, you know? I mean, it's not it's a thing that we do together. Like that's how I'm trying to treat it. Like it's a deliberate nice thing that I'm doing for him, even though he doesn't understand it. He just needs to sit still, you know, for 2.5 minutes roughly, and that's it. And it's just like just sticking the needle in there. Like that's just what makes you nervous. But he has a big subcutaneous area. He's not really feeling much, you know, when the needle goes in. There's not a lot of sensation there, but you know, a lot of people have dealt with this. It's the most common thing that I guess for me, he was my ex-girlfriend's cat, and like I've always had dogs. I've never had cats, and I just offered to take him like 6 years ago, after we broke up. And you know, I don't know, people have pets and they don't necessarily consider like the darker angles of it, or like when you get a pet, you don't really consider that like you might be giving him buying IV bags from the pharmacy.
Yeah.
You know, and I have all this medical gear in my house now, you know, and I'm trying to figure out which needles to buy, and I'm buying IV lines. And I mean, it's kind of a weird thing, you know, to think like that could always be the outcome when you buy or when you get a pet. But I'm coping with it. It's getting a lot better. He's like a different cat. I mean, it's like I've been in denial about, you know, just hoping that he was going to get better for like the last year. And then, you know, oh, he's just going to get over this. And then all of a sudden he's had this treatment and it's like a different cat.
Yeah.
He's just like alive again. He's just crazy and weird and have a good time.
That's awesome.
So that's my little victory. You know, today was a 1 needle day.
Nice.
Well, Eric, it's been fantastic talking to you tonight. We really appreciate it greatly.
Yes.
Everybody here from the radio and all our listeners, I'm sure. Do you have any plugs?
You want to plug something?
I mean, I've got my list of things, I mean, the YouTube channel is where things get, they happen. When things are released, they go there first, because I guess in terms of like what I consider to be the ideal medium, it's, video and audio, because some people never see the videos, surprisingly, or they'll just find something on Bandcamp and they'll never know that there was a video that was with it, which is kind of strange to me. So yeah, I mean, I've got a Bandcamp, I've got a YouTube, I've got a SoundCloud. I'm trying to build an Instagram presence.
Got merch, got shirts
Got
to
merch,
buy.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
got T-shirts.
You've
Love
also
those
got
shirts.
a PayPal and a Patreon.
Yep. Yeah,
Give-
Patreon
give-
has been
give him money.
awesome for me.
Give Eric money.
I believe most of the staff at the radio believes that
Please.
you should be supported. So yeah.
Yes. Yes.
We're-
Seriously.
Yeah,
I don't know.
mean,
I don't know if
Give
everyone.
Eric money. Give Hot Dad money.
I try to be accessible. I mean, I'm always honored that anyone would want to talk to me about anything. I mean, honestly, because
I think I also appreciate when I watch the ends of your videos. You have your little message that comes on, and it's not, the joke with a lot of YouTubers is that like every single video ends with, like, comment, subscribe, and you just make a nice thing that's like, you like it, just subscribe, maybe look at my other stuff. I really like it because it's like a much more personable and approachable like way to just say, just remember, you can pay attention to what I'm doing, and you can also support me.
somebody else mentioned that. I saw it. Somebody was discussing that in like a comment section, and I was like, I mean, it was a bunch of takes that I did it in. It was like eventually I was like, okay, I got this right, but I couldn't explain what was right about it. But yeah, I guess it's just I don't want to bully people. I mean, it's like we were talking about. It's like just getting a like if they just don't even care about me is strange. And that's, what's happening on YouTube now with these algorithm changes and supposedly them not directing traffic to major YouTubers. And it's kind of rough to be in that position right now because like I don't know what the future of YouTube is going to be.
Oh, no one does. Everyone's freaking out on that. There's a lot of videos about, why my content doesn't give me, like, views don't get me money. Neither does this because I need to have a lot of comments and I have a lot of social presence for that to work. And I don't know what YouTube's going to do. No one does.
So I guess in that regard, like, yeah, I have stuff available and like there's the video and then there's a product that exists also. So I guess I'm hoping that I can, survive, that there's some sustainability in that there's a product being produced in that, I mean, I'm on vid.me also that like when this controversy first started coming up with like monetization, on vid.me, they posted a video on Reddit and it went viral of them saying, hey, come to vid.me where we put creators first. And like all of the founders are aware of me on there and like they've shared my videos and they really like me. So I cross post on there also just in case, I've got a lot of fair use videos on YouTube that could cause my channel to be destroyed, with enough strikes. And that makes me nervous. But I've successfully fought off all of those big corporations who come after me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I believe you're also on Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm
you're on
Spotify
iTunes
now.
too, right?
Spotify, iTunes, Tidal.
Wow, Tidal.
Title.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's,
don't
what's
think I-
the
Exclusive.
process for getting on the title?
It's just, I mean, I use DistroKid as my distributor that
Oh,
like, it submits to 10 of them. And then I was also on TuneCore. TuneCore I had to use to put the TV album up on iTunes because TuneCore will accept albums of 101 tracks maximum. And
It's a
none of
very
the other
long
ones,
track list.
all of the other distributors, they cut off at like 33 tracks or something. So I would have had to make 3 albums to get it up there. But TuneCore let me do 101 tracks. But TuneCore takes like more money than DistroKid. And DistroKid is fast. I get my songs on iTunes in like 12 hours sometimes.
Nice.
Wow.
And also Bob Dylan, I struggled to get that one live because they didn't want me to use his name. Then they didn't want me to use his image. So now it's
Wow.
it's up on that one's up on Spotify. It's just Bob D, and it just has the cover art with no Bob Dylan in it. It's just a thing that Peter made of just this like glass formation.
Well, are you also playing any shows anytime soon?
I mean, I don't have any books right now, but I need to, eventually. I guess it's a matter of like reaching a level of stability that like I feel like I want to pursue that again.
All right.
What?
I look forward to the Hot Dad tour around the
Yes.
country.
Your
I-
global tour.
International.
I am so excited for that
International,
because I'm so excited for that. Like I'm gonna have to go to Australia because I have a lot of people there.
Yeah, the internet is
the-
almost entirely Australian. Fun fact.
Yeah, I know. It's just so many likes and I don't know that all end up being people from Australia. So I'm doing something right with regard to that.
Also, Toronto's pretty big too.
Canada's
say?
all right. He said
Toronto,
Toronto.
yeah, we're close. I'm close to that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I really do thank you guys for having me on and asking me to come on this show.
We're just excited
Yeah,
that you
thank you
said
for coming
yes.
in.
Yeah,
Yes.
we appreciate you coming.
It was really insightful.
I
It
hope
was great
so.
to have you on the show.
I start
Came out way
talking
more
and-
serious than
I
expected.
start talking and I
Yes.
don't know what I'm talking about sometimes.
That's good.
This-
We like that.
This was like a very serious interview for us, which usually we just end up messing around too much with the famous people that come and talk to us. We had Phil Elverum once, so
Okay.
that was a mess.
But
I don't even know
anyway,
how we got.
Eric, Hot Dad, it's been amazing. Everybody.
Thank you.
Uh,
I love you guys.
Oh,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
love you too. The radio is really excited to have you.
But anyway, it's been nice.
It
Stay in
was
touch.
very
It's
nice.
been amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking with me.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming
Alright.
on.
And keep me posted, all right?
All right,
Will do.
sure.
Yeah.
If you want to do this again, let me know, all right?
No
Alright, cool.
problem, man.
Definitely.
All
will.
right, you all have a good night.
You too.
You too, man.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye.
Peace.